Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 41. Sanjaya said, "Thou askest me, O monarch, about the prowess of the ruler of the Sindhus. Listen to me as I describe in detail how he fought with the Pandavas. Large steeds of the Sindhu breed, well-trained and fleet as the wind, and obedient to the commands of the charioteer, bore him on that occasion. His car, duly equipped, looked like a vapory edifice in the welkin. His standard bearing the device of a large boar in silver looked exceedingly beautiful. With his white umbrella and banners, and the yak-tails with which he was fanned, which are regal indications he shone like the moon himself in the firmament. His car fence made of iron was decked with pearls and diamonds and gems and gold. And it looked resplendent like the firmament bespangled with luminous bodies. Drawing his large bow and scattering countless shafts, he once more filled up that array in those places where openings had been made by the son of Arjuna. And he pierced Satyaki with 3 arrows, and Vrkodara with 8, and having pierced Drishtadyumna with 60 arrows, he pierced Drupada with 5 sharp ones, and Sikandin with 10. Piercing then the Kaikyas with 25 arrows, Jayadratha pierced each of the 5 sons of Draupadi with 3 arrows. And piercing Yudhishthira then with 70 arrows, the ruler of the Sindhus pierced the other heroes of the Pandava army with thick showers of shafts. And that feat of his seemed exceedingly wonderful. Then, O monarch, the valiant son of Dharma, aiming Jayadratha's bow, cut it off with a polished and well-tempered shaft, smiling the while. Within the twinkling, however, of the eye, the ruler of the Sindhus took up another bow, and piercing Partha, Yudhishthira, with 10 arrows struck each of the others with 3 shafts. Marking that lightness of hands showed by Jayadratha, Bhima then, with 3 broad-headed shafts, quickly felled on the earth his bow, standard, and umbrella. The mighty Jayadratha then, taking up another bow, strung it and felled Bhima's standard and bow and steeds. O sire! His bow cut off, Bhimasena then jumping down from that excellent car whose steeds had been slain, mounted on the car of Satyaki, like a lion jumping to the top of a mountain. Seeing this, thy troops were filled with joy. And they loudly shouted, "Excellent! Excellent!" And they repeatedly applauded that feat of the ruler of the Sindhus. Indeed, all creatures highly applauded that feat of his, which consisted in his resisting, single-handed, all the Pandavas together, excited with wrath. The path that the son of Subhadra had made for the Pandavas by the slaughter of numerous warriors and elephants was then filled up by the ruler of the Sindhus. Indeed, those heroes, viz., the Matsyas, the Panchalas, the Kaikyas, and the Pandavas, exerting themselves vigorously, succeeded in approaching the presence of Jayadratha, but none of them could bear him. Everyone amongst thy enemies who endeavored to pierce the array that had been formed by Drona was checked by the ruler of the Sindhus in consequence of the boon he had got from Mahadeva. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 42. Sanjaya said, when the ruler of the Sindhus checked the Pandavas, desirous of success, the battle that took place then between thy troops and the enemy became awful. The invincible son of Arjuna, of sure aim and mighty energy, having penetrated in the Kaurava array, agitated it like a Makara agitating the ocean. Against that chastiser of foes then, viz., the son of Subhadra, who was thus agitating the hostile host with his arrowy showers, the principal warriors of the Kaurava army rushed, each according to his rank and precedence. The clash between them of immeasurable energy, scattering their arrowy showers with great force on the one side and Abhimanyu alone on the other, became awful. The son of Arjuna, encompassed on all sides by those enemies with crowds of cars, slew the charioteer of Vrishasena and also cut off his bow. And the mighty Abhimanyu then pierced Vrishasena's steeds with his straight shafts, upon which those coursers, with the speed of the wind, bore Vrishasena away from the battle. Utilizing that opportunity, Abhimanyu's charioteer freed his car from that press by taking it away to another part of the field. Those numerous car warriors then, beholding this feat, were filled with joy and exclaimed, "Excellent! Excellent!" Seeing the lion-like Abhimanyu angrily slaying the foe with his shafts and advancing from a distance, Vasatiya, proceeding towards him quickly, fell upon him with great force. The latter pierced Abhimanyu with 60 shafts of golden wings, and addressing him, said, "As long as I am alive, thou shalt not escape with life." Cased though he was in an iron coat of mail, the son of Subhadra pierced him in the chest with a far-reaching shaft. Thereupon Vasatiya fell down on the earth, deprived of life. Beholding Vasatiya slain, many bulls among Kshatriyas became filled with wrath, and surrounded thy grandson, O king, from a desire of slaying him. They approached him, stretching their countless bows of diverse kinds, and the battle then that took place between the son of Subhadra and his foes was exceedingly fierce. Then the son of Falguni, filled with wrath, cut off their arrows and bows, and diverse limbs of their bodies, and their heads decked with earrings and floral garlands. And arms were seen lopped off, that were adorned with various ornaments of gold, and that still held scimitars and spiked maces and battle-axes, and the fingers of which were still cased in leathern gloves. And the earth became strewn with floral wreaths and ornaments and cloths, with fallen standards, with coats of mail and shields and golden chains and diadems and umbrellas and yak-tails, with upashkaras and adhishtanas and dandakas and venduras with crushed akshas, broken wheels, and yokes, numbering thousands, with anakarashas and banners and charioteers and steeds, as also with broken cars and elephants and steeds. The field of battle, strewn with slain Kshatriyas endued, while living, with great heroism, rulers of diverse realms, inspired with desire of victory, presented a fearful sight. When Abhimanyu angrily careered over the field of battle in all directions, his very form became invisible. Only his coat of mail, decked with gold, his ornaments, and bow and shafts, could be seen. Indeed, while he slew the hostile warriors by means of his shafts, staying in their midst like the sun himself in his blazing effulgence, none could gaze at him with his eyes. Footnotes 95:1 These words occur in 17 lower down. 95:2 These are limbs of cars. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 43. Sanjaya said, engaged in taking the lives of brave warriors, Arjuna's son then resembled the destroyer himself, when the latter takes the lives of all creatures on the arrival of the universal dissolution. Possessed of prowess resembling that of Sakra himself, the mighty son of Sakra's son, viz., Abhimanyu, agitating the Kaurava army, looked exceedingly resplendent. Penetrating into the Kaurava host, O king, that destroyer of foremost Kshatriyas resembling Yama himself, seized Satyasravas like an infuriated tiger seizing a deer. Beholding Satyasrayas, seized by him, many mighty car warriors, taking up diverse kinds of weapons, rushed upon him. Indeed, those bulls among Kshatriyas, from a spirit of rivalry, rushed at the son of Arjuna from desire of slaying him, all exclaiming, "I shall go first, I shall go first." As a whale in the sea obtaining a shoal of small fish seizes them with the greatest ease, even so did Abhimanyu receive that whole division of the rushing Kshatriyas. Like rivers that never go back when they approach the sea, none amongst those unretreating Kshatriyas turned back when they approached Abhimanyu. That army then reeled like a boat tossed on the ocean when overtaken by a mighty tempest, with its crew afflicted with panic caused by the violence of the wind. Then the mighty Raghunaratha, son of the ruler of the Madras, for assuring the frightened troops, fearlessly said, "Ye heroes, ye need not fear. When I am here, what is Abhimanyu? Without doubt, I will seize this one a living captive." Having said these words, the valiant prince, borne on his beautiful and well-equipped car, rushed at Abhimanyu. Piercing Abhimanyu with 3 shafts in the chest, 3 in the right arm, and 3 other sharp shafts in the left arm, he uttered a loud roar. Falguni's son, however, cutting off his bow, his right and left arms, and his head adorned with beautiful eyes and eyebrows, quickly felled them on the earth. Beholding Mahabharata, the honored son of Salya, slain by the illustrious son of Subhadra, that Mahabharata viz., who had vowed to consume his foe or take him alive, many princely friends of Salya's son, O king, accomplished in smiting and incapable of being easily defeated in battle, and owning standards decked with gold, came up for the fight. Those mighty car warriors, stretching their bows full 6 cubits long, surrounded the son of Arjuna, all pouring their arrowy showers upon him. Beholding the brave and invincible son of Subhadra singly encountered by all those wrathful princes endued with heroism and skill acquired by practice and strength in youth, and seeing him covered with showers of arrows, Duryodhana rejoiced greatly, and regarded Abhimanyu as one already made a guest of Yama's abode. Within the twinkling of an eye, those princes, by means of their shafts of golden wings, and of diverse forms and great impetuosity, made Arjuna's son invisible. Himself, his standard, and his car, O sire, were seen by us covered with shafts like trees overwhelmed with flights of locusts. Deeply pierced, he became filled with rage like an elephant struck with the hook. He then, O Bharata, applied the Gandharv weapon and the illusion consequent to it. Practicing ascetic penances, Arjuna had obtained that weapon from the Gandharv Tumvaru and others. With that weapon, Abhimanyu now confounded his foes. Quickly displaying his weapons, he careered in that battle like a circle of fire, and was, O king, seen sometimes as a single individual, sometimes as 100, and sometimes as 1,000 ones. Confounding his foes by the skill with which his car was guided and by the illusion caused by his weapons, he cut in 100 pieces, O monarch, the bodies of the kings opposed to him. By means of his sharp shafts the lives of living creatures were dispatched. These, O king, attained to the other world while their bodies fell down on the earth. Their bows, and steeds and charioteers, and standards, and armies decked with Angadar, and heads, the son of Falguni cut off with his sharp shafts. Those 100 princes were slain and felled by Subhadra's son like a tope of 5-year-old mango trees just on the point of bearing fruit, laid low by a tempest. Beholding those youthful princes brought up in every luxury, and resembling angry snakes of virulent poison, all slain by the single-handed Abhimanyu, Duryodhana was filled with fear. Seeing his car warriors and elephants and steeds and foot soldiers crushed, the Kuru king quickly proceeded in wrath against Abhimanyu. Continued for only a short space of time, the unfinished battle between them became exceedingly fierce. Thy son then, afflicted with Abhimanyu's arrows, was obliged to turn back from the fight. Footnotes 97:1 The Bombay reading is slightly different. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 44. Dhritarashtra said, "That which thou tellest me, O Sutta, about the battle, fierce and terrible, between the one and the many, and the victory of that illustrious one, that story of the prowess of Subhadra's son is highly wonderful and almost incredible. I do not, however, regard it as a marvel that is absolutely beyond belief in the case of those that have righteousness for their refuge." After Duryodhana was beaten back and 100 princes slain, what course was pursued by the warriors of my army against the son of Subhadra? Sanjaya said, "Their mouths became dry, and eyes restless. Sweat covered their bodies, and their hair stood on their ends. Despairing of vanquishing their foe, they became ready to leave the field. Abandoning their wounded brothers and sires and sons and friends and relatives by marriage and kinsmen, they fled, urging their steeds and elephants to their utmost speed. Beholding them broken and routed, Drona and Drona's son, and Vrihadvala, and Kripa, and Duryodhana, and Karna, and Kritavarman, and Suvala's son, Sakuni, rushed in great wrath against the unvanquished son of Subhadra. Almost all these, O king, were beaten back by thy grandson. Only one warrior then, viz. Lakshmana, brought up in luxury, accomplished in arrows, endued with great energy, and fearless in consequence of inexperience and pride, proceeded against the son of Arjuna. Anxious about his son, his father, Duryodhana, turned back for following him. Other mighty Kaur warriors turned back for following Duryodhana. All of them then drenched Abhimanyu with showers of arrows, like clouds pouring rain on the mountain breast. Abhimanyu, however, single-handed, began to crush them like the dry wind that blows in every direction, destroying gathering masses of clouds. Like one infuriated elephant encountering another, Arjuna's son then encountered thy invincible grandson, Lakshmana, of great personal beauty, endued with great bravery, staying near his father with outstretched bow, brought up in every luxury, and resembling a second prince of the Ikshas. Encountering Lakshmana, that slayer of hostile heroes, viz., the son of Subhadra, had his 2 arms and chest struck with his sharp shafts. Thy grandson, the mighty-armed Abhimanyu then, filled with rage like a snake struck, with a rod, addressing, O king, thy other grandson, said, Look well on this world, for thou shalt soon have to go to the other. In the very sight of all thy kinsmen, I will dispatch thee to Yama's abode. Saying thus, that slayer of hostile heroes, viz., the mighty-armed son of Subhadra, took out a broad-headed arrow that resembled a snake just emerged from its slough. That shaft, sped by Abhimanyu's arms, cut off the beautiful head, decked with earrings, of Lakshmana, that was graced with a beautiful nose, beautiful eyebrows, and exceedingly good-looking curls. Beholding Lakshmana slain, thy troops uttered exclamations of "Oh" and "Alas!" Upon the slaughter of his dear son, Duryodhana became filled with rage. That bull among Kshatriyas then loudly urged the Kshatriyas under him, saying, Slay this one. Then Drona, and Kripa, and Karna, and Drona's son, and Vrihadvala, and Kritavarman, the son of Hritika, these 6 Kaur warriors, encompassed Abhimanyu. Piercing them with sharp arrows and beating them off from him, the son of Arjuna fell with great speed and fury upon the vast forces of Jayadratha. Thereupon, the Kalingas, the Nishadas, and the valiant son of Kratha, all clad in mail, cut off his path by encompassing him with their elephant division. The battle then that took place between Falguni's son and those warriors was obstinate and fierce. Then the son of Arjuna began to destroy that elephant division as the wind coursing in every direction destroys vast masses of gathering clouds in the welkin. Then Kratha covered the son of Arjuna with showers of arrows, while many other Kaur warriors headed by Drona, having returned to the field, rushed at him, scattering sharp and mighty weapons. Checking all those weapons by means of his own arrows, the son of Arjuna began to afflict the son of Kratha with ceaseless showers of shafts, with great dispatch and inspired by the desire of slaying his antagonist. The latter's bow and shafts, and bracelets, and arms, and head decked with diadem, and umbrella, and standard, and charioteer, and steeds, were all cut off and felled by Abhimanyu. When Kratha's son, possessed of nobility of lineage, good behavior, acquaintance with the scriptures, great strength, fame, and power of arms, was slain, the other heroic combatants almost all turned away from the fight. Footnotes 98:1 literally, like another son of the Lord of Treasure. 99:1 I confess I do not understand what the meaning is of a Saiva Vach Srajatam. The rendering I offer is tentative. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 45. Dhritarashtra said, while the youthful and invincible son of Subhadra, never retreating from battle, was, after penetrating into our array, engaged in achieving feats worthy of his lineage, borne by his 3-year-old steeds of great might and of the best breed, and apparently trotting in the welkin, what heroes of my army encompassed him? Sanjaya said, having penetrated into our array, Abhimanyu of Pandu's race, by means of his sharp shafts, made all the kings turn away from the fight. Then Drona, and Kripa, and Karna, and Drona's son, and Vrihadvala, and Kritavarman, the son of Hritika, these 6 car warriors, encompassed him. As regards the other combatants of thy army, beholding that Jayadratha had taken upon himself the heavy duty of keeping off the Pandavas, they supported him, O king, by rushing against Yudhishthira. Many amongst them, endued with great strength, drawing their bows full 6 cubits long, showered on the heroic son of Subhadra arrowy downpours like torrents of rain. Subhadra's son, however, that slayer of hostile heroes, paralyzed by his shafts all those great bowmen, conversant with every branch of learning. And he pierced Drona with 50 arrows and Vrihadvala with 20. And piercing Kritavarman with 80 shafts, he pierced Kripa with 60. And the son of Arjuna pierced Aswathaman with 10 arrows equipped with golden wings, endued with great speed and shot from his bow drawn to its fullest stretch. And the son of Falguni pierced Karna, in the midst of his foes, in one of his cars, with a bright, well-tempered, and bearded arrow of great force. Felling the steeds yoked to Kripa's car, as also both his Prashni charioteers, Abhimanyu pierced Kripa himself in the center of the chest with 10 arrows. The mighty Abhimanyu, then, in the very sight of thy heroic sons, slew the brave Vrindaraka, that enhancer of the fame of the Kurus. While Abhimanyu was thus engaged in fearlessly slaying one after another the foremost warriors among his enemies, Drona's son Aswathaman pierced him with 25 small arrows. The son of Arjuna, however, in the very sight of all the Dhritarashtras, quickly pierced Aswathaman in return, O sire, with many whetted shafts. Drona's son, however, in return, piercing Abhimanyu with 60 fierce arrows of great impetuosity and keen sharpness, failed to make him tremble, for the latter, pierced by Aswathaman, stood immovable like the Menaka mountain. Endued with great energy, the mighty Abhimanyu then pierced his antagonist with 73 straight arrows, equipped with wings of gold. Drona then, desirous of rescuing his son, pierced Abhimanyu with 100 arrows. And Aswathaman pierced him with 60 arrows, desirous of rescuing his father. And Karna struck him with 22 broad-headed arrows, and Kritavarman struck him with 4 and 10. And Vrihadvala pierced him with 50 such shafts, and Saradwata's son, Kripa, with 10. Abhimanyu, however, pierced each of these in return with 10 shafts. The ruler of the Kosala struck Abhimanyu in the chest with a barbed arrow. Abhimanyu, however, quickly felled on the earth his antagonist's steeds and standard and bow and charioteer. The ruler of the Kosalas, then, thus deprived of his car, took up a sword and wished to sever from Abhimanyu's trunk his beautiful head, decked with earrings. Abhimanyu then pierced King Vrihadvala, the ruler of the Kosalas, in the chest, with a strong arrow. The latter then, with riven heart, fell down. Beholding this, 10,000 illustrious kings broke and fled. Those kings, armed with swords and bows, fled away, uttering words inimical to King Duryodhana's interest. Having slain Vrihadvala thus, the son of Subhadra careered at battle, paralyzing thy warriors, those great bowmen, by means of arrowy downpours, thick as rain. Footnotes 100:1 I follow the numbering of the Bengal texts. 23 consists of 3 lines. 100:2 I expand the fifth a little to make the sense clear. 101:1 I expand the fifth a little to make the sense clear. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 46. Sanjaya said, Falguni's son once more pierced Karna in the car with a barbed arrow, and for angering him still further, he pierced him with 50 other shafts. The son of Radha pierced Abhimanyu in return with as many shafts. Covered all over with arrows, Abhimanyu, then, O sire, looked exceedingly beautiful. Filled with rage, he caused Karna also to be bathed in blood. Mangled with arrows and covered with blood, the brave Karna also shone greatly. Both of them pierced with arrows, both bathed in blood. Those illustrious warriors then resembled a couple of flowering kinsukas. The son of Subhadra then slew 6 of Karna's brave counselors, conversant with all modes of warfare, with their steeds and charioteers and cars. As regards other great bowmen, Abhimanyu fearlessly pierced each of them in return, with 10 arrows. That feat of his seemed highly wonderful. Slaying next the son of the ruler of the Magadhas, Abhimanyu, with 6 straight shafts, slew the youthful Aswatu with his 4 steeds and charioteer. Then slaying, with a sharp razor-headed arrow, the Bhoja prince of Mardakavada, bearing the device of an elephant on his banner, the son of Arjuna uttered a loud shout and began to scatter his shafts on all sides. Then the son of Dusasana pierced the 4 steeds of Abhimanyu with 4 shafts, his charioteer with 1 and Abhimanyu himself with 10. The son of Arjuna, then, piercing Dusasana's son with 10 fleet shafts, addressed him in a loud tone and with eyes red in wrath, said, abandoning the battle, Thy sire hath fled like a coward. It is well thou knowest how to fight. Thou shalt not, however, escape today with life. Saying these words unto him, Abhimanyu sped a long arrow, well polished by smith's hand, at his foe. The son of Drona cut that arrow with 3 shafts of his own. Leaving Aswathaman alone, Arjuna's son struck Salya, in return, fearlessly pierced him in the chest with highly 9 shafts, equipped with vulture's feathers. That feat seemed highly wonderful. The son of Arjuna then cut off Salya's bow and slew both his Prashni charioteers. Abhimanyu then pierced Salya himself with 6 shafts made wholly of iron. Thereupon, the latter, leaving that steedless car, mounted another. Abhimanyu then slew 5 warriors, named Satranjaya, and Chandraketu, and Mahamegba, and Suvrachas, and Suryabhasa. He then pierced Suvala's son. The latter, piercing Abhimanyu with 3 arrows, said unto Duryodhana, Let us all together grind this one, else, fighting singly with us, he will slay us all. O king, think of the means of slaying this one, taking counsel with Drona and Kripa and others. The Karna, the son of Vikartana, said unto Drona, Abhimanyu grindeth us all. Tell us the means by which we may slay him. Thus addressed, the mighty bowman, Drona, addressing them all, said, observing him with vigilance, Have any of you been able to detect any defeat in this youth? He is careening in all directions. Yet have any of you been able to detect today the least hole in him? Behold the lightness of hand and quickness of motion of this lion among men, this son of Arjuna. In the track of his car, only his bow drawn to a circle can be seen, so quickly is he aiming his shafts, and so quickly is he letting them off. Indeed, this slayer of hostile heroes, viz., the son of Subhadra, gratifieth me, although he afflicteth my vital breath and stupefieth me with shafts. Even the mightiest car warriors, filled with wrath, are unable to detect any flaw in him. The son of Subhadra, therefore, careering on the field of battle, gratifieth me greatly. I do not see that in battle there is any difference between the wielder of Gandiva himself and this one of great lightness of hand, filling all the points of the horizon with his mighty shafts. Hearing these words, Karna, afflicted with the shafts of Arjuna's son, once more said unto Drona, exceedingly afflicted with the shafts of Abhimanyu, I am staying in battle, only because, as a warrior, I should stay here. Indeed, the arrows of this south of great energy are exceedingly fierce. Terrible as they are and possessed of the energy of fire, these arrows are weakening my heart. The preceptor then, slowly and with a smile, said unto Karna, Abhimanyu is young, his prowess is great. His coat of mail is impenetrable. This one's father had been taught by me the method of wearing defensive armor. This subjugator of hostile towns assuredly knoweth the entire science of wearing armor. With shafts well shot, you can, however, cut off his bowstring, the reins of his steeds, the steeds themselves, and 2 Parshni charioteers. O mighty bowman, O son of Radha, if competent, do this. Making him turn back from the fight, by this means, strike him then. With his bow in hand he is incapable of being vanquished by the very gods and the Asuras together. If you wish, deprive him of his car, and divest him of his bow. Hearing these words of the preceptor, Vikartana's son Karna quickly cut off, by means of his shafts, the bow of Abhimanyu, as the latter was shooting with great activity. He, of Bhoja's race, viz., Kritavarman, then slew his steeds, and Kripa slew his 2 Parshni charioteers. The others covered him with showers of arrows after he had been divested of his bow. Those 6 great car warriors, with great speed, when speed was so necessary, ruthlessly covered that carless youth, fighting single-handed with them, with showers of arrows. Bowless and carless, with an eye, however, to his duty, as a warrior, handsome Abhimanyu, taking up a sword and a shield, jumped into the sky. Displaying great strength and great activity, and describing the tracks called Kausika and others, the son of Arjuna fiercely coursed through the sky, like the prince of winged creatures, viz., Garuda. He may fall upon me sword in hand. With such thoughts, those mighty bowmen were on the lookout for the latches of Abhimanyu, and began to pierce him in that battle, with their gaze turned upwards. Then Drona of mighty energy, that conqueror of foes, with a sharp arrow quickly cut off the hilt, decked with gems, of Abhimanyu's sword. Radha's son Karna, with sharp shafts, cut off his excellent shield. Deprived of his sword and shield thus, he came down, with sound limbs, from the welkin upon the earth. Then taking up a car wheel, he rushed in wrath against Drona. His body bright with the dust of car wheels, and himself holding the car wheel in his upraised arms, Abhimanyu looked exceedingly beautiful, and imitating Vasudeva, with his discus, became awfully fierce for a while in that battle. His robes dyed with the blood flowing from his wounds, his brow formidable with the wrinkles visible thereon, himself uttering loud leonine roars, Lord Abhimanyu of immeasurable might, staying in the midst of those kings, looked exceedingly resplendent on the field of battle. Footnotes 101:2 in the first fine of 3. The correct reading is Karnachapi Akarat Krata, etc. The reading in the Bengal text is vicious and unmeaning. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 47. Sanjaya said, that joy of Vishnu's sister, viz., Abhimanyu, that Adaratha, decked with the weapons of Vishnu himself, looked exceedingly beautiful on the field of battle and looked like a second Janardana. With the end of his locks waving in the air, with that supreme weapon upraised in his hands, his body became incapable of being looked at by the very gods. The kings, beholding it and the wheel in his hands, became filled with anxiety, and cut that off in 100 fragments. Then that great car warrior, the son of Arjuna, took up a mighty mace. deprived by them of his bow and car and sword, and divested also of his wield by his foes, the mighty armed Abhimanyu, mace in hand, rushed against the Swathaman. Beholding that mace upraised, which looked like the blazing thunderbolt, a Swathaman, that tiger among men, rapidly alighted from his car and took 3 long leaps for avoiding Abhimanyu. Slaying a Swathaman's steeds and 2 Parshni charioteers with that mace of his, Subhadra's son, pierced all over with arrows, looked like a porcupine. Then that hero pressed Suvala's son, Kalakiya, down into the earth, and slew 70 Gandhara followers of the latter. Next, he slew 10 car warriors of the Brahmavasatiya race, and then 10 huge elephants. Proceeding next towards the car of Dusasana's son, he crushed the latter's car and steeds, pressing them down into the earth. The invincible son of Dusasan, then, O sire, taking up his mace, rushed at Abhimanyu, saying, "Wait, wait." Then those cousins, those 2 heroes, with upraised maces, began to strike each other, desirous of achieving each other's death, like 3-eyed Mahadeva and the Asura and Haka in the days of old. IACH of those chastisers of foes, struck with the others' maces, fell down on the earth, like 2 uprooted standards erected to the honor of Indra. Then Dusasana's son, that enhancer of the fame of the Kurus, rising up first, struck Abhimanyu with the mace on the crown of his head, as the latter was on the point of rising. Stupefied with the violence of that stroke as also with the fatigue he had undergone, that slayer of hostile hosts, viz., the son of Subhadra, fell on the earth, deprived of his senses. Thus, O king, was one slain by many in battle, one who had ground the whole army, like an elephant grinding lotus stalks in a lake. As he lay dead on the field, the heroic Abhimanyu looked like a wild elephant slain by the hunters. The fallen hero was then surrounded by thy troops. And he looked like an extinguished fire in the summer season after, as it lies, having consumed the whole forest, or like a tempest divested of its fury after having crushed mountain crests, or like the sun arrived at the western hills after having blasted with his heat the Bharata host, or like Soma swallowed up by Rahu, or like the ocean reft of water. The mighty car warriors of thy army beholding Abhimanyu, whose face had the splendor of the full moon, and whose eyes were rendered beautiful in consequence of lashes black as the feathers of the raven, lying prostrate on the bare earth, were filled with great joy. And they repeatedly uttered leonine shouts. Indeed, O monarch, thy troops were in transports of joy, while tears fell fast from the eyes of the Pandava heroes. Beholding the heroic Abhimanyu lying on the field of battle, like the moon dropped from the firmament, diverse creatures, O king, in the welkin, said aloud, Alas, this one lieth on the field, slain, while fighting singly, by 6 mighty car warriors of the Dhartarashtra army, headed by Drona and Karna. This act hath been, we hold, an unrighteous one. Upon the slaughter of that hero, the earth looked exceedingly resplendent like the star-bespangled firmament with the moon. Indeed, the earth was strewn with shafts equipped with wings of gold, and covered with waves of blood, and strewn with the beautiful heads of heroes, decked with earrings and variegated turbans of great value, and banner and yak tails and beautiful blankets, and begemmed weapons of great efficacy, and the bright ornaments of cars and steeds, and men and elephants, and sharp and well-tempered swords, looking like snakes freed from their sloughs, and bows, and broken shafts, and darts, and swords, and lances, and campanas, and divers other kinds of weapons, she assumed a beautiful aspect. And in consequence of the steeds dead or dying, but all weltering in blood, with their riders lying about them, felled by Subhadra's son, the earth in many places became impassable. And with iron hooks, and elephants huge as hills equipped with shields and weapons and standards, lying about, crushed with shafts, with excellent cars deprived of steeds and charioteers and car warriors, lying scattered on the earth, crushed by elephants and looking like agitated lakes, with large bodies of foot soldiers decked with diverse weapons and lying dead on the ground, the field of battle, wearing a terrible aspect, inspired all timid hearts with terror. Beholding Abhimanyu, resplendent as the sun or the moon, lying on the ground, thy troops were in transport of joy, while Pandavas were filled with grief. When youthful Abhimanyu, yet in his minority, fell, the Pandava divisions, O king, fled away in the very sight of King Yudhishthira. Beholding his army breaking upon the fall of Subhadra's son, Yudhishthira addressed his brave warriors, saying, "The heroic Abhimanyu, who without retreating from battle hath been slain, hath certainly ascended to heaven. Stay then, and fear not, for we shall yet vanquish our foes." Endued with great energy and great splendor, King Yudhishthira the Just, that foremost of warriors, saying such words unto his soldiers inspired with grief, endeavored to dispel their stupor. The king continued, having in the first instance slain in battle hostile princes, resembling snakes of virulent poison, the son of Arjuna hath then given up his life. Having slain 10,000 warriors, viz., the king of the Kosalas, Abhimanyu, who was even like Krishna or Arjuna himself, hath assuredly gone to the abode of Indra. Having destroyed cars and steeds and men and elephants by thousands, he was still not content with what he did. Performing as he did such meritorious feats, we should not certainly grieve for him. He hath gone to the bright regions of the righteous, regions that men acquire by meritorious deeds. Footnotes 104:1 Bengal text read Tirutrangani IE, Treetops. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 48. Sanjaya said, having thus slain one of their foremost warriors, and having been afflicted with their arrows, we came back to our encampment in the evening, covered with blood. Steadfastly gazed at by the enemy, we slowly left, O monarch, the field of battle, having sustained a severe loss and nearly deprived of our senses. Then came that wonderful hour intervening between day and night. Inauspicious howls of jackals were heard. The sun, with the pale red hue of the filaments of the lotus, sank low in the horizon, having approached the western hills. And he took away with him the splendor of our swords and darts, rapiers and carfences, and shields and ornaments. Causing the firmament and the earth to assume the same hue, the sun assumed his favorite form of fire. The field of battle was strewn with the motionless bodies of innumerable elephants deprived of life, looking like crests of cloud-capped hills riven by the thunder, and lying about with their standards and hooks and riders fallen from their backs. The earth looked beautiful with large cars crushed to pieces, and with their warriors and charioteers and ornaments and steeds and standards and banners crushed, broken, and torn. Those huge cars, O king, looked like living creatures deprived of their lives by the foe with his shafts. The field of battle assumed a fierce and awful aspect in consequence of large number of steeds and riders all lying dead, with costly trappings and blankets of diverse kinds scattered about, and tongues and teeth and entrails and eyes of those creatures bulging out of their places. Men decked with costly coats of mail and ornaments and robes and weapons, deprived of life, lay with slain steeds and elephants and broken cars, on the bare ground, perfectly helpless, although deserving of costly beds and blankets. Dogs and jackals, and crown and cranes and other carnivorous birds, and wolves and hyenas, and ravens and other food-drinking creatures, all diverse tribes of Rakshasas, and large number of Pisachas, on the field of battle, tearing the skins of the corpse and drinking their fat, blood and marrow, began to eat their flesh. And they began to suck also the secretions of rotten corpses, while the Rakshasas laughed horribly and sang aloud, dragging dead bodies numbering thousands. An awful river, difficult to cross, like the Vaitarani itself, was caused there by foremost of warriors. Its waters were constituted by the blood of fallen creatures. Cars constituted the rafts, or, which to cross it, elephants formed its rocks, and the heads of human beings, its smaller stones. And it was miry with the flesh of slain steeds and elephants and men. And diverse kinds of costly weapons constituted the garlands, floating on it or lying on its banks. And that terrible river flowed fiercely through the middle of the field of battle, wafting living creatures to the regions of the dead. And large numbers of Pisachas, of horrible and repulsive forms, rejoiced, drinking and eating in that stream. And dogs and jackals and carnivorous birds, all eating of the same food, and inspiring living creatures with terror, held their high carnival there. And the warriors, gazing on that field of battle which, enhancing the population of Yama's domain, presented such an awful sight, and where human corpses rising up, began to dance, slowly left it as they beheld the mighty car warrior Abhimanyu, who resembled Sakra himself, lying on the field, his costly ornaments displaced and fallen off, and looking like a sacrificial fire on the altar no longer drenched with clarified butter. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 49. Sanjaya said, after the slaughter of that hero, that leader of car divisions, viz., the son of Subhadra, the Pandava warriors, leaving their cars and putting off their armor, and throwing aside their loads, sat, surrounding King Yudhishthira. And they were brooding over that grief of theirs, their hearts fixed upon the deceased Abhimanyu. Indeed, upon the fall of that heroic nephew of his, viz., the mighty car warrior Abhimanyu, King Yudhishthira, overwhelmed with grief, indulged in these lamentations. Alas, Abhimanyu, from desire of achieving my good, pierced the array formed by Drona and teeming with his soldiers. Encountering him in battle, mighty bowmen endued with great courage, accomplished in weapons and incapable of being easily defeated in battle, were routed and forced to retreat. Encountering our implacable foe Dussasana in battle, he with his arrows caused that warrior to fly away from the field, deprived of his senses. Alas, the heroic son of Arjuna, having crossed the vast sea of Drona's army, was ultimately obliged to become a guest of Yama's abode upon encountering the son of Dussasana. When Abhimanyu is slain, how shall I cast my eyes on Arjuna and also the blessed Subhadra deprived of her favorite son? What senseless, disjointed, and improper words shall we have to say today unto Hrishikesa and Dhananjaya? Desirous of achieving what is good, and expectant of victory, it is I who have done this great evil unto Subhadra and Kesava and Arjuna. He that is covetous never beholds his faults. Covetousness spring from folly. Collectors of honey see not the fall that is before them. I am even like them. He who was only a child, he who should have been provided with good food, with vehicles, with beds, with ornaments, alas, even he was placed by us in the van of battle. How could good come to a child of tender years, unskilled in battle, in such a situation of great danger? Like a horse on proud mettle, he sacrificed himself instead of refusing to do the bidding of his master. Alas, we also shall today lay ourselves down on the bare earth, blasted by the glances of grief, cast by Arjuna filled with wrath. Dhananjaya liberal, intelligent, modest, forgiving, handsome, mighty, possessed of well-developed and beautiful limbs, respectful to superiors, heroic, beloved, and devoted to truth, of glorious achievements, the very gods applaud his feats. That valiant hero slew the Nivedakavachas and the Kalakiyas, those enemies of Indra having their abode in Hiranyapura. In the twinkling of an eye he slew the Palamas with all their followers. Endued with great might, he granteth quarter to implacable enemies asking for quarter. Alas, we could not protect today the son of even such a person from danger. A great fear hath overtaken the Dhritarashtra's, endued though they might be with great strength. Enraged at the slaughter of his son, Partho will exterminate the Kauravas. It is evident also that the mean-minded Duryodhana, having mean counselors, that destroyer of his own race and partisans, beholding this extermination of the Kaurava army, will give up his life in grief. Beholding this son of Indra's son, of unrivaled energy and prowess, on the field of battle, neither victory, nor sovereignty, nor immortality, nor abode with the very celestials, causeth me the least delight. Footnotes 107:1 The correct reading is Mahavalan Mahavalat. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 50. Sanjaya said, while Kunti's son, Yudhishthira, was indulging in such lamentations, the great Rishi Krishna Dwapayana came to him. Worshipping him duly, and causing him to be seated, Yudhishthira, afflicted with grief on account of the death of his brother's son, said, Alas, while battling with many mighty bowmen, the son of Subhadra, surrounded by several great car warriors of unrighteous propensities, hath been slain on the field. The slayer of hostile heroes, the son of Subhadra, was a child in years and of childish understanding. He fought in battle against desperate odds. I asked him to open a passage for us in battle. He penetrated within the hostile army, but we could not follow him, obstructed by the ruler of the Sindhus. Alas, they that betake themselves to battle as a profession always fight with antagonists equally circumstanced with themselves. This battle, however, that the enemy fought with Abhimanyu was an extremely unequal one. It is that which grieves me greatly and draws tears from me. Thinking of this, I fail to regain peace of mind. Sanjaya continued, the illustrious Vyasa, addressing Yudhishthira, who was indulging in such lamentations, and who was thus unmanned by an accession of sorrow, said these words. Vyasa said, O Yudhishthira, O thou of great wisdom, O thou that art master of all branches of knowledge, persons like thee never suffer themselves to be stupefied by calamities. This brave youth, having slain numerous foes, hath ascended to heaven. Indeed, that best of persons, though a child, acted, however, like one of matured years. O Yudhishthira, this law is incapable of being transgressed. O Bharata, death takes all viz., gods and Danavas and Gandharvas, without exception. Yudhishthira said, Alas, these lords of earth, that lie on the bare earth, slain in the midst of their forces, bereft of consciousness, were possessed of great might. Others, of their class, possessed strength equal to that of 10,000 elephants. Others, again, were endued with the impetuosity and might of the very wind. They have all perished in battle, slain by men of their own class. I do not behold the person, save one of their own class, who could slay any of them in battle. Endued with great prowess, they were possessed of great energy and great might. Alas, they who used daily to come to battle with this hope firmly implanted in their hearts, viz., that they would conquer, alas, even they, possessed of great wisdom, are lying on a field, struck with weapons, and deprived of life. The significance of the word death hath today been made intelligible, for these lords of earth, of terrible prowess, have almost all been dead. Those heroes are lying motionless, reft of vanity, having succumbed to foes. Many princes, filled with wrath, have been victimized before the fire of their enemies' wrath. A great doubt possesses me, viz. Whence is death? Whose offspring is death? What is death? Why does death take away creatures? O grandsire, O thou that resemblest a god, tell me this. Sanjaya continued, unto Kunti's son, Yudhishthira, asking him thus, the illustrious Rishi, comforting him, said these words. Vyasa said, as regards the matter in hand, O king, this ancient story of what Narada had in days of old said unto Akampana is cited. King Akampana, O monarch, I know, while in this world was afflicted with very great and unbearable grief on account of the death of his son, I will now tell thee the excellent story about the origin of death. Having listened to it, thou wilt be emancipated from sorrow and the touch of affection's tie. Listen to me, O sire, as I recite this ancient history. This history is, indeed, excellent. It enhanceth the period of life, killeth grief, and conduceth to health. It is sacred, destructive of large bodies of foes, and auspicious of all auspicious things. Indeed, this history is even as the study of the Vedas. O monarch, it should every morning be listened to by the foremost of kings who are desirous of long-lived children and their own good. In days of old, O sire, there was a king named Akampana. Once, on the field of battle, he was surrounded by his foes and nearly overpowered by them. He had a son who was called Hari. Equal to Narayana himself in might, that latter was exceedingly handsome, accomplished in weapons, gifted with great intelligence, possessed of might, resembled Sakra himself in battle. Encompassed by countless foes on the field of battle, he sped thousands of shafts at those warriors and the elephants that surrounded him. Having achieved the most difficult feats in battle, O Yudhishthira, that scorcher of foes was, at last, slain in the midst of the army. Performing the obsequies of his son, King Akampana cleansed himself. Grieving, however, for his son day and night, the king failed to regain happiness of mind. Informed of his grief on account of the death of his son, the celestial rishi Narada came to his presence. The blessed king, beholding the celestial rishi, told the latter everything that had happened unto him, viz., his defeat at the hands of his foes, and the slaughter of his son. And the king said, My son was endued with great energy, and equaled Indra or Vishnu himself in splendor. That mighty son of mine, having displayed his prowess on the field against countless foes, was at last slain. O illustrious one, who is this death? What is the measure of his energy, strength, and prowess? O foremost of intelligent persons, I desire to hear all this truly. Hearing these words of his, the boon-giving Lord, Narada, recited the following elaborate history, destructive of grief on account of a son's death. Narada said, Listen, O mighty-armed king, to this long history, exactly as I have heard it, O monarch. In the beginning, the grandsire Brahma created all creatures. Endued with mighty energy, he saw that the creation bore no signs of decay. Thereat, O king, the Creator began to think about the destruction of the universe. Reflecting on the matter, O monarch, the Creator failed to find any means of destruction. He then became angry, and in consequence of his anger a fire sprang from the sky. That fire spread in all directions for consuming everything of the universe. Then heaven, sky, and earth all became filled with fire. And thus the Creator began to consume the whole mobile and immobile universe. Thereby all creatures, mobile and immobile, were destroyed. Indeed, the mighty Brahma, frightening everything by the force of his wrath, did all this. Then Hara, otherwise called Stanu or Shiva, with matted locks on his head, that lord of all wanderers of the night, appealed to the divine Brahma, the lord of the gods. When Stanu fell, at Brahma's feet, from a desire of doing good to all creatures, the supreme deity, to that greatest of ascetics, blazing with splendor, said, What wish of thine shall we accomplish, O thou that deservest to have all thy wishes fulfilled? O thou that hast been born of our wish! We shall do all that may be agreeable to thee. Tell us, O Stanu, what is thy wish? Footnotes 108:1 The Bombay reading which I accept is Valabuddhiska. Of course Bengal reading is a Valabuddhiska. 109:1 During the days of mourning a person is regarded as unclean, being unable to perform his ordinary worship and other religious rites. After the obsequies are performed, the mourning is ended, he is supposed to be cleansed. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 51. Stander said, O Lord, thou hadst taken great care for creating diverse creatures. Indeed, creatures of diverse kinds were created and reared by thee. Those very creatures, again, are now being consumed through thy fire. Seeing this, I am filled with compassion. O illustrious Lord, be inclined to grace. Brahma said, I had no desire of destroying the universe, I desired good of the earth, and it was for this that wrath possessed me. The goddess Earth, afflicted with the heavy weight of creatures, always urged me for destroying the creatures on her. Urged by her, I could not, however, find any means for the destruction of the infinite creation. At this wrath possessed me. Rudra said, Be inclined to grace. O Lord of the universe, cherish not the wrath for the destruction of creatures. No more let creatures, immobile and mobile, be destroyed. Through thy grace, O illustrious one, let the threefold universe, viz., the future, the past, and the present exist. Thou, O Lord, hadst blazed up with wrath. From that wrath of thine, a substance like fire sprang into existence. That fire is even now blasting rocks and trees and rivers, and all kinds of herbs and grass. Indeed, that fire is exterminating the immobile and the mobile universe. The mobile and the immobile universe is being reduced to ashes. Be inclined to grace, O illustrious one. Do not give way to wrath. Even this is the boon I solicit. All created things, O divine being, belonging to thee, are being destroyed. Therefore, let thy wrath be appeased. Let it be annihilated in thy own self. Cast thy eye on thy creatures, inspired with the desire of doing them good. Do that by which creatures endued with life may not cease to be. Let not these creatures, with their productive powers weakened, be exterminated. O Creator of the worlds, thou hast appointed me their protector, O Lord of the universe, let not the mobile and the immobile universe to be destroyed. Thou art inclined to grace, and it is for this that I say these words unto thee. Narada continued, hearing these words of Mahadeva, the divine Brahma, from desire of benefiting creatures, held in his own inner self his wrath that had been roused. Extinguishing the fire, the divine benefactor of the world, the great master, declared the duties of production and emancipation. And while the supreme deity exterminated that fire born of his wrath, there came out from the doors of his diverse senses a female who was dark and red and tawny, whose tongue and face and eyes were red, and who was decked with 2 brilliant earrings and diverse other brilliant ornaments. Issuing out of his body, she smilingly looked at those 2 lords of the universe and then set out for the southern quarter. Then Brahma, that controller of the creation and destruction of the worlds, called after her by the name of Death. And Brahma, O king, said unto her, Slay these creatures of mine. Thou hast been born of that wrath of mine which I cherished for the destruction of the universe. By doing this, kill all creatures including idiots and seers at my command. By doing this, thou wilt be benefited. Thou lotus lady, called Death, thus addressed by him, reflected deeply, and then helplessly wept aloud in melodious accents. The grandsire then caught the tears she had shed, with his 2 hands, for the benefit of all creatures, and began to implore her, with these words. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 52. Narada said, the helpless lady, suppressing her arrow within her own self, addressed, with joined hands, the Lord of the creation, bending with humility like a creeper. And she said, O foremost of speakers, created by thee, how shall I, being a female, do such a cruel and evil act, knowing it to be cruel and evil? I fear unrighteousness greatly. O divine Lord, be inclined to grace. Sons and friends and brothers and sires and husbands are always dear. If I kill them, they who will suffer these losses will seek to injure me. It is this that I fear. The tears that will fall from the eyes of woe-stricken and weeping persons inspire me with fear, O Lord. I seek thy protection. O divine being, O foremost of gods, I will not go to Yama's abode. O boon-giving one, I implore thee or thy grace, bowing my head and joining my palms. O grandsire of the worlds, I solicit the accomplishment of even this wish at thy hands. I desire, with thy permission, to undergo ascetic penances, O Lord of created things. Grant me this boon, O divine being, O great master. Permitted by thee, I will go to the excellent asylum of Dhenuka. Engaged in adoring thyself, I will undergo the severest austerities there. I will not be able, O Lord of the gods, to take away the dear life breaths of living creatures weeping in sorrow. Protect me from unrighteousness. Brahma said, O death, thou hast been intended for achieving the destruction of creatures. Go, destroy all creatures, thou needst have no scruples. Even this must be. It cannot be otherwise. Do but my behest. Nobody in the world will find any fault in thee. Narada continued, thus addressed, that lady became very much affrighted. Looking at Brahma's face, she stood with joined hands. From desire of doing good to creatures, she did not set her heart upon their destruction. The divine Brahma also, that Lord of all creatures, remained silent. And soon the grandsire became gratified in his own self. And casting his eyes upon all the creation he smiled. And, thereupon, creatures continued to live as before, i.e., unaffected by premature death. And upon that, invincible and illustrious Lord having shaken off his wrath, that damsel left the presence of that wise deity. Leaving Brahma, without having agreed to destroy creatures, the damsel called Death speedily proceeded to the retreat called Dhenuka. Arrived there, she practiced excellent and highly austere vows. And she stood there on one leg for 16 billions of years, and 5 times 10 billions also, through pity for living creatures and from desire of doing them good, and all the time restraining her senses from their favorite objects. And once again, O king, she stood there on one leg for 120 times 10 billions of years. And then she wandered for 10 times 10,000 billions of years with the creatures of the earth. Next, repairing to the sacred Nanda that was full of cool and pure water, she passed in those waters 8,000 years. Observing rigid vows at Nanda, she cleansed herself of all her sins. Then she proceeded, first of all, to the sacred Kausaki, observant of vow. Living upon air and water only, she practiced austerities there, repairing then to Panchaganga and next to Vedasa, that cleansed damsel, by diverse kinds of especial austerities, emaciated her own body. Going next to the Ganga and thence to the great Meru, she remained motionless like a stone, suspending her life breath. Thence going to the top of Himavat, where the gods had performed their sacrifice, in days of yore, that amiable and auspicious girl remained for 1 billion of years standing on the toe only of her feet. Wending then to Pushkara, and Gokarna, and Naimisha, and Malaya, she emaciated her body, practicing austerities agreeable to her heart. Without acknowledging any other god, with steady devotion to the grandsire, she lived and gratified the grandsire in every way. Then the unchangeable creator of the worlds, gratified, said unto her, with a softened and delighted heart, O death, why dost thou undergo ascetic austerities so severe? Thus addressed, Death said unto the divine grandsire, creatures, O Lord, are living in health. They do not injure one another even by words. I shall not be able to slay them. O Lord, I desire even this boon at thy hands. I fear sin, and it is for this that I am engaged in ascetic austerities. O blessed one, undertake to remove forever my fears. I am a woman, in distress, and without fault. I beg thee, be thou protector. Unto her the divine Brahman, acquainted with the past, the present, and the future, said, Thou shalt commit no sin, O death, by slaying these creatures. My words can never be futile, O amiable one. Therefore, O auspicious damsel, slay these creatures of 4 kinds. Eternal virtue shall always be thine. That region of the world, viz., Yama, and the diverse disease shall become thy helpmates. I myself and all the gods will grant thee boons, so that, freed from sin and perfectly cleansed, thou mayst even acquire glory. Thus addressed, O monarch, that lady, joining her hands, once more said these words, seeking her grace by bowing down unto him with her head. If, O Lord, this is not to be without me, then thy command I place upon my head. Listen, however, to what I say. Let covetousness, wrath, malice, jealousy, quarrel, folly, and shamelessness, and other stern passions tear the bodies of all embodied creatures. Brahman said, It will be, O death, as thou sayest. Meanwhile, slay creatures duly. Sin shall not be thine, nor shall I seek to injure thee, O auspicious one. Those teardrops of thine that are in my hands, even they will become diseases, springing from living creatures themselves. They will kill men, and if men are killed, sin shall not be thine. Therefore, do not fear, indeed, sin shall not be thine. Devoted to righteousness, and observant of thy duty, thou shalt sway all creatures. Therefore, take thou always the 5s of these living creatures. Casting off both desire and wrath, take thou the life of all living creatures. Even thus will eternal virtue be thine. Sin will stay those that are of wicked behavior. By doing my bidding cleanse thyself. It will be thine to sink them in their sins that are wicked. Therefore, cast off both desire and wrath, and kill these creatures endued with life. Narada continued, that damsel, seeing that she was, persistently, called by the name of death, feared to act otherwise. And in terror also of Brahma's curse, she said, Yes. Unable to do otherwise, she began, casting off desire and wrath, to take the lives of living creatures when the time came for their dissolution. It is only living creatures that die. Diseases spring from living creatures themselves. Disease is the abnormal condition of creatures. They are pained by it. Therefore, indulge not in fruitless grief for creatures after they are dead. The senses, upon the death of creatures, go with the latter to the other world, and achieving their respective functions, once more come back with creatures when the latter are reborn. Thus all creatures, O lion among beings, the very gods included going thither, have to act like mortals. The wind, that is awful, of terrible roars and great strength, omnipresent and endued with infinite energy, it is the wind that will rive the bodies of living creatures. It will, in this matter, put forth no active energy, nor will it suspend its functions, but do this naturally. Even all the gods have the appellation of mortals attached to them. Therefore, O lion among kings, do not grieve for thy son. Repairing to heaven, the son of thy body is passing his days in perpetual happiness, having obtained those delightful regions that are for heroes. Casting off all sorrows, he hath attained to the companionship of the righteous. Death hath been ordained by the Creator himself for all creatures. When their hour comes, creatures are destroyed duly. The death of creatures arises from the creatures themselves. Creatures kill themselves. Death doth not kill any one, armed with her bludgeon. Therefore, they that are wise, truly knowing death to be inevitable, because ordained by Brahma himself, never grieve for creatures that are dead. Knowing this death to be ordained by the Supreme God, cast off, without delay, thy grief for thy dead son. Vyasa continued, hearing these words of grave import spoken by Narada, King Akampana, addressing his friend, said, O illustrious one, O foremost of Rishi, my grief is gone, and I am contented. Hearing this history from thee, I am grateful to thee, and I worship thee. That foremost of superior Rishi, that celestial ascetic of immeasurable soul, thus addressed by the king, proceeded to the woods of Nandava. The frequent recital of this history for the hearing of others, as also the frequent hearing of this history, is regarded as cleansing, leading to fame and heaven and worthy of approbation. It enhanceth besides the period of life. Having listened to this instructive story, cast off thy grief, O Yudhishthira, reflecting besides the duties of a kshatriya and the high state of blessedness attainable by heroes. Abhimanyu, that mighty car warrior, endued with mighty energy, having slain numerous foes before the gaze of all bowmen, hath attained to heaven. The great bowman, that mighty car warrior, struggling on the field, hath fallen in the battle struck with sword and mace and dart and bow. Sprung from Soma, he hath disappeared in the lunar essence, cleansed of all his impurities. Therefore, O son of Pandu, mustering all thy fortitude, thyself with thy brothers, without allowing your senses to be stupefied, speedily set out, inflamed with rage, for battle. Footnotes 112:1. The first line of 6 is read differently in the Bombay edition. The Bengal reading, however, seems to me to be preferable. 112:2. Both the Bengal and Bombay editions, and the first line of 12, read prida, i.e., gratified. There can be no doubt, however, that the correct reading is bida, i.e., affrighted, as I have put it. I find that some of the Bengali translators have also made this correction. 114:1. Devis, and the first line of 46, means the senses, vritas, as explained by Nilkantha, means Vritavantis. 115:1 verse 55, as occurring in both the Bengal and the Bombay text, requires corrections. 55 is incomplete. For the words Tataraja, therefore, I read Sokamtayaja, as suggested by K. P. Singha. Then the Visarga after Yudhishthira must be dropped to make it evocative. Similarly, Pandavas in 58 should be Pandava, evocative, and not a nominative upakramat should be upakrama. The last two corrections are made in the Bombay text. The fact is, are 55 to 58 the words of Vyasa or of Sanjaya? Evidently, it is Vyasa that speaks, and hence the necessity of the corrections noted. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 53. Sanjaya said, hearing of the origin of death and her strange acts, King Yudhishthira, humbly addressing Vyasa, once more said these words unto him. Yudhishthira said, many kings there were in blessed countries, of righteous deeds and of prowess equal to that of Indra himself. They were royal sages, O regenerate one, that were sinless and truth-speaking. Once more, address me in words of grave import, and console me with accounts of the feats of those royal sages of ancient times. What was the measure of the sacrificial gifts made by them? Who were those high-souled royal sages of righteous deeds that made them? Tell me all this, O illustrious one. Vyasa said, there was a king of the name of Switya. He had a son who was called Sranjaya. The rishis Narada and Parvata were his friends. One day, the two ascetics, for paying Sranjaya a visit, came to his palace. Duly worshipped by Sranjaya, they became pleased with him and continued to live with him happily. Once on a time as Srinjaya was seated at his case with the two ascetics, his beautiful daughter of sweet smiles came to him. Saluted with reverence by his daughter, Srinjaya delighted that girl standing by his side with proper benedictions of the kind she desired. Beholding that maiden, Parvata smilingly asked Srinjaya, saying, "Whose daughter is this damsel of restless glances and possessed of every auspicious mark? Is she the splendor of Surya, or the flame of Agni? Or is she any of these, viz., Sri, Hri, Kirti, Dhriti, Pushti, Siddhi, and the splendor of Soma?" After the celestial rishi, Parvata, said these words, King Srinjaya answered, saying, "O illustrious one, this girl is my daughter. She beggeth my blessings." Then Narada addressed King Srinjaya and said, "If, O monarch, thou wishest for great good to thyself, then give this daughter of thine unto me for a wife." Delighted with the rishi's proposal, Srinjaya addressed Narada, saying, "I give her unto thee." At this, the other rishi, viz., Parvata, indignantly addressed Narada, saying, "Chosen before this by me, within my heart, thou hast taken this damsel as thy wife. And since thou hast done this, thou, O Brahmana, shalt not go to heaven as thou wilt." Thus addressed by him, Narada answered him, saying, "The husband's heart and speech, directed thereto, the giver's consent, the speeches of both, the actual gift made by sprinkling water, and the recital of the mantras, ordained for the seizure of the bride's hand, these have been declared to be indications by which one is constituted a husband. Even this ceremonial is not all. That which, above all, is essential is the walk for 7 paces by the bride in circumambulating the bridegroom. Without these thy purpose about marriage have been unaccomplished. Thou hast cursed. Therefore, thou also shalt not go to heaven without me." Having cursed each other, those two rishis continued to live there. Meanwhile, King Srinjaya, desirous of obtaining a son, began, with cleansed soul, to carefully entertain the Brahmanas to the utmost of his power, with food and robes. After a certain time, those foremost of Brahmanas devoted to the study of the Vedas and fully conversant with those scriptures and their branches became gratified with that monarch, desirous of getting a son. Together they came to Narada and said unto him, "Give this king a son of the kind he desires." Thus addressed by the Brahmanas, Narada replied unto them, saying, "So be it." And then the celestial rishi addressed Srinjaya, saying, "O royal sage, the Brahmanas have been pleased and they wish thee a son. Solicit thou the boon, blessed be thou, about the kind of son thou desirest." Thus addressed by him, the king, with joined hands, asked for a son possessed of every accomplishment, famous, of glorious feats, of great energy, and capable of chastising all foes. And he further asked that the urine, the excreta, the phlegm, and the sweat of that child should be gold. And in due time the king had a son born unto him, who came to be named Suvarnashtavan on earth. And in consequence of the boon, that child began to increase, his father's, wealth beyond all limits. And King Srinjaya caused all desirable things of his to be made of gold. And his houses and walls and forts, and the houses of all Brahmanas within his dominions, and his beds, vehicles, and plates, and all manners of pots and cups, and palace that he owned, and all implements and utensils, domestic and otherwise, were made of gold. And in time his stock increased. Then certain robbers, hearing of the prince, and seeing him to be such, assembled together and sought to injure the king. And some amongst them said, "We will seize the king's son himself. He is his father's mine of gold. Towards that end, therefore, we should strive." Then those robbers, inspired with avarice, penetrating into the king's palace, forcibly took away Prince Suvarnashtavan. having seized and taken him to the woods, those senseless idiots, inspired with avarice but ignorant of what to do with him, slew him there and cut his body in fragments. They saw not, however, any gold in him. After the prince was slain, all the gold, obtained in consequence of the rishi's boon, disappeared. The ignorant and senseless robbers struck one another. And striking one another thus, they perished, and with them that wonderful prince on the earth. And those men of wicked deeds sank in an unimaginable and awful hell. Seeing that son of his, obtained through the rishi's boon thus slain, that great ascetic, viz., King Srinjaya, afflicted with deep sorrow, began to lament in piteous accents. Beholding the king afflicted with grief on account of his son, and thus weeping, the celestial rishi Narada showed himself in his presence. Listen, O Yudhishthira, to what Narada said unto Srinjaya, having approached that king, who afflicted with grief and deprived of his senses, was indulging in piteous lamentations. Narada said, Srinjaya, with thy desires unfulfilled, thou shalt have to die, although we utterers of Brahma live in thy house. Avikshit's son Maruta even, O Srinjaya, we here, had to die. Piqued with Vrahaspati, he had caused Samvata himself to officiate at his great sacrifices. Unto that royal sage the illustrious Lord, Mahadeva, himself had given wealth in the shape of a golden plateau of Himavat. With that wealth, King Maruta had performed diverse sacrifices. Unto him, after the completion of his sacrifices, diverse tribes of celestials, those creators of the universe, with Indra himself in their company and with Vrahaspati at their head, used to come. All the carpets and furnitures of his sacrificial compound were of gold. The regenerate classes, desirous of food, all ate as they pleased, at his sacrifices, food that was clean and agreeable to their desires. And in all his sacrifices, milk and curds and clarified butter and honey, and other kinds of food and edibles, all of the best order, and robes and ornaments covetable for their costliness, gratified Brahmanas, thoroughly conversant with the Vedas. The very gods used to become distributors of food in King Maruta's palace. The Viswadevas were the courtiers of that royal sage, the son of Avikshit. By him were gratified the denizens of heaven with libations of clarified butter. And gratified therewith, these, in their turn, increased that powerful ruler's wealth of crops with copious showers of rain. He always contributed to the gratification of the rishis, the pitris, and the gods, and thereby made them happy, by practicing brahmacharya, study of the Vedas, obsequial rites, and all kinds of gifts. And his beds and carpets and vehicles, and his vast stores of gold difficult to be given away, in fact, all that untold wealth of his, was given away voluntarily unto the Brahmanas. Sakra himself used to wish him well. His subjects were made happy by him, acting always with piety. He, ultimately, repaired to those eternal regions of bliss, acquired by his religious merit. With his children and counselors and wives and descendants and kinsmen, King Maruta, in his youth, ruled his kingdom for 1,000 years. When such a king, O Srinjaya, died who was superior to thee, in respect of the four cardinal virtues, viz., ascetic penances, truth, compassion, and liberality, and who, superior to thee, was much superior to thy son, do not grieve, saying, O Swaitya, for thy son who performed no sacrifice and gave no sacrificial present. Footnotes 116:1 I follow Nilkantha in rendering these two verses. 116:2 of Golden Excreta. 117:1 The Bengal reading is Samvartam. The Bombay text makes Samvarta a nominative. I have adopted the Bengal reading. If the Bombay reading be accepted, the meaning would be that Samvarta himself, piqued with Vrahaspati, caused Maruta to perform a sacrifice. K.P. Singham makes a ludicrous blunder in supposing Samvarta to have been a kind of sacrifice. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 56. Narada said, King Suhotra also, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. He was the foremost of heroes, and invincible in battle. The very gods used to come for seeing him. Acquiring his kingdom virtuously, he sought the advice of his Ritwijas and domestic priests and brahmanas for his own good, and inquiring of them, used to obey their behests. Well acquainted with the duty of protecting his subjects, possessed of virtue and liberality, performing sacrifices and subjugating foes, King Suhotra wished for the increase of his wealth. He adored the gods by following the ordinances of the scriptures, and defeated his foes by means of his arrows. He gratified all creatures by means of his own excellent accomplishments. He ruled the earth, freeing her from lekas and the forest thieves. The deity of the clouds showered gold unto him from year's end to year's end. In those olden days, therefore, the rivers, in his kingdom, ran liquid gold, and were open to everybody for use. The deity of the clouds showered on his kingdom large number of alligators and crabs and fishes of diverse species and various objects of desire, countless in number, that were all made of gold. The artificial lakes in that king's dominions each measured full 2 miles. Beholding thousands of dwarfs and humpbacks and alligators and makaras and tortoises all made of gold, King Suhotra wondered much. That unlimited wealth of gold, the royal sage Suhotra, performing a sacrifice at Kurujangala, gave away unto the brahmanas before the completion of the sacrifice. Having performed 1,000 horse sacrifices, 100 rajasuyas, many sacred kshatriya sacrifices, in all of which he made abundant presents to the brahmanas, and having performed daily rites, almost countless in number, undergone from specified desires, the king ultimately obtained a very desirable end. When, O Sranjaya, such a king died, who was superior to thee as regards the 4 cardinal virtues, and who, superior to thee, was therefore much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not grieve, saying, O Swagya, for thy son performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 118:1 The word in the original Adavika, literally meaning one dwelling in the woods. It is very generally used in the sense of thieves or robbers, thus showing that these depredators from the earliest times had the woods and the forests for their home. 118:2 Vahinya's rivers. Swearing is open to everybody. The Bengal reading is Abhavan, the Bombay reading Vyatahan. If the former reading be adopted, it would mean the rivers were of liquid gold. 118:3 i.e., sacrifices ordained for kshatriyas. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 57. Narada said, the heroic King Kaurava also, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. That king gave away 1,000 times 1,000 horses that were all white in hue. At the horse sacrifice performed by that royal sage, countless number of learned brahmanas versed in the principles of siksha and akshara come from diverse realms. These brahmanas, purified by the Vedas, by knowledge, and by vows, and liberal and of agreeable countenances, having obtained from the king costly gifts, such as robes and houses and excellent beds and carpets and vehicles and draught cattle, were always delighted by actors and dancers and singers, thoroughly competent and well-versed in their respective art, engaged in sport and ever striving for their diversion. At each of his sacrifices in due time he gave away as sacrificial presents 10,000 elephants of golden splendor, with the temporal juice trickling down their bodies, and cars made of gold with standards and banners. He also gave away, as sacrificial presents, 1,000 times 1,000 maidens decked with ornaments of gold, and cars and steeds and elephants for mounting, and houses and fields, and hundreds of kine, by hundreds of thousand, and thousands of cowherds decked with gold. They that are acquainted with the history of the past sing this song, viz., that in that sacrifice King Kauravas gave away kine with calves, having golden horns and silver hoofs and brass milkpots, and female slaves and male slaves and asses and camels, and sheep, countless in number, and diverse kinds of gems and diverse hill-like mounds of food. That sacrificing king of the Angas successively performed, in the order of their merit, and according to what was competent for his own class, many auspicious sacrifices capable of yielding every object of desire. When such a king, O Sranjaya, died who was superior to thee as regards the four cardinal virtues, and who, superior to thee was, therefore, much more superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for thy son who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 119:1 Siksha, one of the 6 branches of Vedas, it may be called the orthoepy of the Vedas. Akshara, letters of the alphabet. The sense seems to be that these Brahmanas were good readers of the Vedas. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 58. Narada said, using our son, Sivi also, O Sranjaya, we here, fell a prey to death. That king had, as it were, put a leathern girdle around the earth, making the earth with her mountains and islands and seas and forests resound with the clatter of his car. The vanquisher of foes, viz., King Sivi, always slew the foremost of foes. He performed many sacrifices with presents in profusion unto the Brahmanas. That monarch of great prowess and great intelligence had acquired enormous wealth. In battle, he won the applause of all Kshatriyas. Having brought the whole earth under subjection, he performed many horse sacrifices, without any obstruction, which were productive of great merit, giving away, as sacrificial present, 1,000 crores of golden nishkas, and many elephants and steeds and other kinds of animals, much grain, and many deer and sheep. And King Sivi gave away the sacred earth, consisting of diverse kinds of soil, unto the Brahmanas. Indeed, Usanara's son, Sivi, gave away as many kind as the number of raindrops showered on the earth, or the number of stars in the firmament, or the number of sand grains, or the bed of Ganga, or the number of rocks that constitute the mountain called Meru, or the number of gems or of aquatic animals in the ocean. The Creator himself hath not met with and will not meet within the past, the present, or the future, another king capable of bearing the burdens that King Sivi bore. Many were the sacrifices, with every kind of rites, that King Sivi performed. In those sacrifices, the stakes, the carpets, the houses, the walls, and the arches were all made of gold. Food and drink, agreeable to the taste and perfectly clean, were kept in profusion. And the Brahmanas that repaired to them could be counted by myriads and myriads. Abounding with viands of every description, nothing but agreeable words such as give away and take were heard there. Milk and curds were collected in large lakes. In his sacrificial compound, there were rivers of drink and white hills of food. Bathe, and drink and eat as ye like, these were the only words heard there. Gratified with his righteous deeds, Rudra granted Sivi a boon, saying, As thou givest away, let thy wealth, thy devotion, thy fame, thy religious acts, the love that all creatures bear thee, and the heaven thou attain, be all inexhaustible. Having obtained all these desirable boons, even Sivi, when the time came, left this world for heaven. When, O Sranjaya, he died who was superior to thee, was much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for thy son who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 120:1 The word in the original Murdhabhishikta, which literally means one whose coronal locks have undergone the ceremony of the sacred investiture. Hence, it is used to denote kshatriyas or persons of the royal order. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 59. Narada said, Rama, the son of Dasaratha, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. His subjects were as much delighted with him as a sire is delighted with the children of his loins. Endued with immeasurable energy, countless virtues were there in him. Of unfading glory, Rama, the elder brother of Lakshmana, at the command of his father, lived for 14 years in the woods with his wife. That bull among men slew in Janastana 14,000 Rakshasas for the protection of the ascetics. While dwelling there, the Rakshasa called Ravana, beguiling both him and his companion, Lakshmana, abducted his wife, the princess of Videha. Like the three-eyed Mahadeva in days of old, slaying the Asura and Haka, Rama in wrath slew in battle that offender of Pulasatya's race who had never before been vanquished by any foe. Indeed, the mighty armed Rama slew in battle that descended of Pulasatya's race with all his kinsmen and followers, that Rakshasa who was incapable of being slain by the gods and the Asuras together, that wretch who was a thorn unto the gods and the Brahmanas. In consequence of his affectionate treatment of his subjects, the celestials worshipped Rama. Filling the entire earth with his achievements, he was much applauded even by the celestial rishis. Compassionate unto all creatures, that king, having acquired diverse realms and protected his subjects virtuously, performed a great sacrifice without obstruction. And the Lord, Rama, also performed 100 horse sacrifices and the great sacrifice called Jaruthya. And with libations of clarified butter he contributed to Indra's delight. And by these acts of his, Rama conquered hunger and thirst, and all the diseases to which living creatures are subject. Possessed of every accomplishment, he always blazed forth with his own energy. Indeed, Rama, the son of Dasaratha, greatly outshone all creatures. When Rama ruled his kingdom, the rishis, the gods, and men all lived together on the earth. The lives of living creatures were never otherwise. The life breaths also, called prana, apana, samama, and the others, when Rama ruled his kingdom, all performed their functions. All luminous bodies shone brighter, and calamities never occurred. All his subjects were long-lived. None died in youth. The dwellers of heaven, highly gratified, used to get, according to the ordinances of the four Vedas, libations of clarified butter and other offerings of food made by men. His realms were free from flies and gnats, and of beasts of prey and poisonous reptiles there were none. And none was of unrighteous tendencies, none was covetous, and none was ignorant. The subjects of all the four orders were engaged in righteous and desirable acts. When the Rakshasas, about this time, obstructed the offerings to the Pitris and the worship of the gods in Janastana, Lord Rama, slaying them, caused those offerings and that worship to be once more given to the Pitris and the gods. Men were each blessed with 1,000 children, and the period of their lives was 1,000 years. Seniors had never to perform shraddhas of their juniors. Youthful in shape, of a dark blue hue, of red eyes, possessed of the tread of an infuriated elephant, with arms reaching down to the knees, and beautiful and massive, of leonine shoulders, of great strength, and beloved by all creatures, Rama ruled his kingdom for 11,000 years. His subjects always uttered his name. While Rama ruled his kingdom, the world became extremely beautiful. Taking at last his 4 kinds of subjects with him, Rama went to heaven, having established his own line consisting of 8 houses on the earth. When even he died, O Sranjaya, who was superior to thee in respect of the four cardinal virtues and superior to thy son, thou shouldst not lament, saying, O Swagia, for thy son who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 121:1 Havisham Udam Avahat, or Havisham Udam Avahat, which would mean, he poured libations unto Indra as copious as water. 122:1 Because juniors predeceased their seniors. The causative form of Acaraean is a license. 122:2 The four kinds of creatures that owned Rama's sway were 1. Those that were oviparous, 2. Those that were viviparous, 3. Those born of filth, and 4. The vegetables. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 60. Narada said, even King Bhajaratha, O Sranjaya, we hear, was dead. He caused the shores of Ganga, called after his name Bhagirath, to be covered with flights of steps made of gold. Surpassing all kings and all princes, he gave unto the Brahmanas 1,000 times 1,000 damsels decked with ornaments of gold. All those damsels were upon cars. And unto every car were yoked 4 steeds, and behind each car were 100 kine. And behind each cow were many goats and sheep. King Bhajaratha gave enormous presents at his sacrifices. For that reason a large concourse of men assembled there. Afflicted there with Ganga was much pained. Protect me, she said, and sat down on his lap. And because Ganga thus sat upon his lap in days of old, therefore, she, like the celestial dancer Urvasi, came to be regarded as his daughter and was named after his name. And having become the king's daughter, she became his son, by becoming like a son, the means of salvation unto his deceased ancestors. Sweet-speeched Gandharvas of celestial splendor, gratified, sang all this in the hearing of the rishis, the gods, and human beings. Thus, O Sranjaya, did that goddess, viz., the ocean-going Ganga, select Lord Bhajaratha, descendant of Ikshvaku, the performer of sacrifices with profuse gifts, to the Brahmanas, as her father. His sacrifices were always graced with the presence of the very gods, with Indra at their head. And the gods used to take their respective shares, by removing all impediments, to facilitate those sacrifices in every way. Possessed of great ascetic merit, Bhajaratha gave unto the Brahmanas whatever benefit they desired, without obliging them to stir from the place wherever they might entertain those desires. There was nothing which he could withhold from the Brahmanas. Every one received from him everything he coveted. At last, the king ascended to the region of Brahman, through the grace of the Brahmanas. For that object on which the rishis that subsisted on the rays of the sun used to wait upon the sun and the presiding deity of the sun, for that very object they used to wait upon the Lord Bhajaratha, that ornament of the 3 worlds. When he died, O Sranjaya, who was superior to thee, as regards the 4 cardinal virtues, and who, superior to thee, was much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not grieve, saying, O Swagia, for the latter who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 122:3 These were ghats for facilitating access to the sacred stream. 123:1 Both 5 and 6 are difficult slokas. But for Nilkantha I could never have understood their sense. The reading Jalagina, occurring in both the Bengal and the Bombay editions, is a mistake for Janagina. The construction of 5 is this: Dakshina Bhaya Surdadet, Tina Hituna Janagina Akaranta. The story of the salvation of Bhajaratha's ancestors is a beautiful myth. King Sagara, when Sagara, or the ocean, had 60,000 sons. They were all reduced to ashes by the curse of the sage Kapila, an incarnation of Vishnu himself. Bhajaratha, a remote descendant, caused the sacred Ganga to roll over the spot where the ashes of his ancestors lay, and thus procured their salvation. 123:2 The correct reading is Valgavadina's, and not the form in the genitive plural. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 61. Narada said, Dilapa, the son of Havala, 2, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. Brahmanas, vested in knowledge of truth, devoted to the performance of sacrifices, blessed with children and children's children and numbering myriads upon myriads, were present at his hundreds of sacrifices. King Dilapa, having performed various sacrifices, gave away this earth, filled with treasures, unto the Brahmanas. At the sacrifices of Dilapa, the roads were all made of gold. The very gods, with Indra at their head, used to come to him, regarding him as Dharma himself. The upper and lower rings of his sacrificial stake were made of gold. Eating his ragakandavas, many persons, at his sacrifices, were seen to lie down on the roads. While battling over the waters, the two wheels of Dilapa's car never sank in that liquid. This seemed exceedingly wonderful, and never occurred to other kings, even those that saw King Dilapa, that firm bowman, always truthful in speech and giving away profuse gifts at his sacrifices, succeeded in ascending to heaven. In the abode of Dilapa, called also Katanga, these 5 sounds were always to be heard, viz., the sound of Vedic recitations, the twang of bows, and drink, enjoy, and eat. When he died, O Sranjaya, who was superior to thee in respect of the 4 cardinal virtues, and who superior to thee, was much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for thy son who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial gifts. Footnotes 124:1 In the Bombay edition, some verses occur after the third. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 62. Narada said, Mandathri the son of Uvanaswa, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. That king vanquished the gods, the Asuras and men. Those celestials, viz., the twin Ashwins, brought him out of his father's womb by a surgical operations. Once on a time, King Uvanaswa, while chasing the deer in the forest, became very thirsty, and his steeds also became exceedingly fatigued. Beholding a wreath of smoke, the king, directed by it, went to a sacrifice and drank the sacred sacrificial butter that lay scattered there. The king, thereupon, conceived. Beholding that Uvanaswa was quick with child, those best of physicians, viz., the twin Ashwins among the celestials, extracted the child from the king's womb. Seeing that child of celestial splendor lying on the lap on his father, the gods said unto one another, What shall support this child? Then Vasva said, Let the child suck my fingers. Thereupon from the fingers of Indra issued milk sweet as nectar. And since Indra from compassion said, He will draw his sustenance from me, and showed him that kindness, therefore the gods named that child Mandathri. Then jets of milk and clarified butter dropped into the mouth of Uvanaswa's son from the hand of the high-souled Indra. The boy continued to suck the hand of Indra, and by that means to grow. In 12 days he became 12 cubits in stature and endued with great prowess. And he conquered the whole of this earth in the course of a single day. A virtuous soul, possessed of great intelligence, heroic, devoted to truth, and a master of his passions, Mandathri vanquished, by his bow Janamajaya and Sudhanwan and Jaya and Suna and Vrahadratha and Nriga. And the lands lying between the hill where the sun rises and the hill where he sets are known to this day as the dominion of Mandathri. Having performed 100 horse sacrifices and 100 Rajasuya sacrifices also, he gave away, O monarch, unto the Brahmanas some Rohita fish made of gold, that were 10 yojanas in length and 1 yojana in breadth. mountains of savory food and comestibles of diverse kinds, after the Brahmanas had been entertained, were eaten by others, who came at his sacrifices and contributed to their gratification. Vast quantities of food and eatables and drink, and mountains of rice, looked beautiful as they stood. Many rivers, having lakes of clarified butter, with diverse kinds of soup for their mire, curds for their froth, and liquid honey for their water, looking beautiful, and wafting honey and milk, encircled mountains of solid viands. Gods and asuras and men and yakshas and gandharvas and snakes and birds, and many brahmanas, accomplished in the Vedas and their branches, and many rishis came to his sacrifices. Amongst those present there, none was illiterate. King Mandathari, having bestowed the earth bounded by the seas and full of wealth upon the Brahmanas, at last disappeared like the sun. Filling all the points of the compass with his fame, he repaired to the regions of the righteous. When he died, O Sranjaya, who excelled thee in the four cardinal virtues, and who, superior to thee, was much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not grieve, saying, O Swagya, for the latter who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial gift. Footnotes 124:2 literally having me for his sustainer. 124:3 instead of Suna, the Bombay text gives Puru. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 63. Narada said, Yayati, the son of Nahusha, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. Having performed 100 Rajasuyas, 100 horse sacrifices, 1,000 Pundarikas, 100 Vajapayas, 1,000 Adoratras, innumerable Chaturmajas, diverse Agnishtomas, and many other kinds of sacrifices, and all of which he made profuse gifts unto the Brahmanas, he gave away unto the Brahmanas, having counted at first the whole of the wealth that existed on the earth in the possession of Mlekas and other Brahmana-hating people. When the gods and the asuras were arrayed for battle, King Yayati aided the gods. Having divided the earth into 4 parts, he gave it away unto 4 persons. Having performed various sacrifices and virtuously begotten excellent offspring upon his wives, Devyani, the daughter of Usanas and Sarmishta, King Yayati, who was like unto a celestial, roved through the celestial woods at his own pleasure, like a second Vasva. Acquainted with all the Vedas, when, however, he found that he was not satiated with the indulgence of his passions, he then, with his wives, retired into the forest, saying this, whatever of paddy and wheat and gold and animals and women there are on earth, even the whole of these is not sufficient for one man. Thinking of this, one should cultivate contentment. Thus abandoning all his desires, and attaining to contentment, the Lord Yayati, installing his son on his throne, retired into the forest. When he died, O Sranjaya, who was superior to thee in respect of the 4 cardinal virtues, and who, superior to thee, was much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for the latter who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 64. Narada said, Nabhaga's son, Amvarasha, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. Alone he battled 1,000 times with 1,000 kings. Desirous of victory, those foes, accomplished in weapons, rushed against him in battle from all sides, uttering fierce exclamations. Aided by his strength and activity and the skill he had acquired by practice, he cut off, by the force of his weapons, the umbrellas, the weapons, the standards, the cars, and the lances of those enemies, and dispelled his anxieties. Desirous of saving their lives, those men, doffing their coats of mail, implored him for mercy. They sought his protection, saying, We yield ourselves to thee. Reducing them to subjection and conquering the whole earth, he performed 100 sacrifices of the best kind, according to the rites ordained in the scriptures, O sinless one. Food possessed of every agreeable quality was eaten, at those sacrifices, by large classes of people. At those sacrifices, the Brahmanas were respectfully worshipped and greatly gratified. And the regenerate classes ate sweetmeats, and purikas and puras, and apupas and sashkalis of good taste and large size, and karambas and prithamaradwikas, and diverse kinds of dainties, and various kinds of soup, and mariaka, and ragakandavas, and diverse kinds of confectionery, well prepared, soft, and of excellent fragrance, and clarified butter, and honey, and milk, and water, and sweet curds, and many kinds of fruits and roots agreeable to the taste. And they that were habituated to wine drank in due time diverse kinds of intoxicating drinks for the sake of the pleasure that those produced, and sang and played upon their musical instruments. Avid others, by thousands, intoxicated with what they drank, danced and merrily sang hymns to the praise of Amvarasha, while others, unable to keep themselves erect, fell down on the earth. In those sacrifices, King Amvarasha gave, as sacrificial presents, the kingdoms of hundreds and thousands of kings unto the 10,000,000 priests, employed by him. Having performed diverse sacrifices, the king gave unto the Brahmanas, as sacrificial presents, numbers of princes and kings whose coronal locks had undergone the sacred bath, all cased in golden coats of mail, all having white umbrellas spread over their heads, all seated on golden cars, all attired in excellent robes, and having large trains of followers, and all bearing their scepters, and in possession of their treasuries. The great rishis, seeing what he did, were highly gratified, and said, None amongst men in past times did, none in future will be able to do, what King Amvarasha of profuse liberality is doing now. When he, O Sranjaya, died, who was superior to thee in respect of the 4 cardinal virtues, and who superior to thee, was much more superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, therefore, saying, O Swagya, grieve for the latter, who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 126:1 The Bengal text reads this verse differently. 126:2 The words in italics are names of Indian confectionery, prepared with wheat or barley, milk, and sugar or honey. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 65. Narada said, King Sasavendu, O Sranjaya, we here, fell a prey to death. Of great beauty and of prowess incapable of being baffled, he performed diverse sacrifices. That high-souled monarch had 100,000 wives. From each of those wives were born 1,000 sons. All those princes were endued with great prowess. They performed millions of sacrifices. Accomplished in the Vedas, those kings performed many foremost of sacrifices. All of them were cased, on occasions of battle, in golden coats of mail. And all of them were excellent bowmen. All these princes born of Sasavendu performed horse sacrifices. Their father, O best of monarchs, in the horse sacrifices he had performed, gave away, as sacrificial presents, all those sons unto the Brahmanas. Behind each of those princes were hundreds upon hundreds of cars and elephants and fair maidens decked in ornaments of gold. With each maiden were 100 elephants, with each elephant 100 cars, with each car 100 steeds, adorned with garlands of gold. With each of those steeds were 1,000 kine, and with each cow were 50 goats. The highly blessed Sasavendu gave away unto the Brahmanas, and the great horse sacrifice of his such unlimited wealth. The king caused as many sacrificial stakes of gold to be made for that great horse sacrifice of his as is the number, double of sacrificial stakes of wood in other sacrifices of the kind. There were mountains of food and drink of the height of about 2 miles each. Upon the completion of his horse sacrifice, 13 such mountains of food and drink remained untouched. His kingdom abounded in people that were contented and well-fed. And it was free from all inroads of evil, and the people were perfectly happy. Having ruled for many long years, Sasivendu, at last, ascended to heaven. When he died, O Srinjaya, who was superior to thee in respect of the 4 cardinal virtues, and who superior to thee was, therefore, much more superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for the latter who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 66. Narada said, Gaya, the son of Amitarajas, O Srinjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death, that king, for 100 years, ate nothing but what remained of the libations of clarified butter poured into the sacrificial fire. Agni, gratified with his proof of great devotion, offered to give him a boon. Gaya solicited the boon, desired, saying, I desire to have a thorough knowledge of the Vedas through ascetic penances, through practice of brahmacharya, and of vows and rules, and through the grace of my superiors. I desire also inexhaustible wealth, through practice of the duties of my own order and without injury to others. I wish also that I may always be able to make gifts unto the Brahmanas with devotion. Let me also procreate sons upon wives belonging to my own order and not upon others. Let me be able to give away food with devotion. Let my heart always delight in righteousness. O Agni, thou supreme cleanser, let no impediment overtake me while I am engaged in acts for the attainment of religious merit. Saying be it so, Agni disappeared then and there. And Gaya also, acquiring all he had asked for, subjugated his foes in fair fight. King Gaya then performed, for a full 100 years, diverse kinds of sacrifices with profuse presents unto the Brahmanas and the vows called Chaturmajas and others. Every year, for a century, the king gave, unto the Brahmanas, 160,000 kine, 10,000 steeds, and 1 crore gold, nishkas, upon rising, on the completion of his sacrifices. Under every constellation also he gave away the presents ordained for each of these occasions. Indeed, the king performed various sacrifices like another Soma or another Angiras. In his great horse sacrifice, King Gaya, making a golden earth, gave her away unto the Brahmanas. In that sacrifice, the stakes of King Gaya were exceedingly costly, being of gold, decked with gems delightful to all creatures. Capable of killing every wish, Gaya gave those stakes unto well-pleased Brahmanas and other people. The diverse classes of creatures dwelling in the ocean, the woods, the islands, the rivers male and female, the waters, the towns, the provinces, and even in heaven, were all gratified with wealth and food distributed at Gaya's sacrifices. And they all said, no other sacrifice can come up to this one of Gaya. The sacrificial altar of Gaya was 30 yojanas in length, 26 yojanas in width, and 20 yojanas in height. And it was made entirely of gold, and overspread with pearls and diamonds and gems. And he gave away this altar unto the Brahmanas, as also robes and ornaments. And the munificent monarch also gave unto the Brahmanas other presents of the kind laid down in the scriptures. Upon the completion of that sacrifice 25 hills of food remained untouched, and many lakes and several beautifully flowing rivulets of juicy drinks, and many heaps, besides, of robes and ornaments. And in consequence of the merit of that great sacrifice, Gaya came to be well known in the 3 worlds. And due to that sacrifice are the eternal Banyan and the sacred Brahmasara. When he died, O Srinjaya, who was superior to thee in respect of 4 cardinal virtues, and who superior to thee was, therefore, much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for the latter who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 128:1 These are the methods by which he sought knowledge of the Vedas. 128:2 Nakshatradakshina is explained by Nilkantha as Nakshatra Vihitradakshina. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 67. Narada said, Rantadeva, the son of Srinjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. That high-souled king had 200,000 cooks to distribute excellent food, raw and cooked, like unto Amrita, unto the Brahmanas, by day and by night, who might come to his house as guests. The king gave away unto the Brahmanas his wealth acquired by righteous means. Having studied the Vedas, he subjugated his foes in fair fight. Of rigid vows and always engaged in due performance of sacrifices, countless animals, desirous of going to heaven, used to come to him of their own accord. So large was the number of animals sacrificed in the Agnihotra of that king that the secretions flowing from his kitchen from the heaps of skins deposited there caused a veritable river which from this circumstance came to be called the Charmanwadi. He incessantly gave away nishkas of bright gold unto the Brahmanas. I give thee nishkas. I give thee nishkas. These were the words incessantly uttered by him. I give thee, saying these words he gave away thousands of nishkas. And once again, with soft words to the Brahmanas, he gave away nishkas. Having given away, in course of a single day, 1 crore of such coins, he thought that he had given away very little. And, therefore, he would give away more. Who else is there that would be able to give what he gave? The king gave away wealth, thinking, if I do not give wealth in the hands of Brahmanas, great and eternal grief, without doubt, will be mine. For 100 years, every fortnight, he gave unto thousands of Brahmanas a golden bowl into each, followed by a century of kine and 800 pieces of nishkas. All the articles that were needed for his Agnihotra, and all that were needed for his other sacrifices, he gave away unto the rishis, including karukas and water pots and plates and beds and carpets and vehicles, and mansions and houses, and diverse kinds of trees, and various kinds of viands. Whatever utensils and articles Rantadeva possessed were of gold. They that are acquainted with the history of ancient times, seeing the superhuman affluence of Rantadeva, sing this song, viz., we have not seen such accumulated treasures even in the abode of Kuvera. What need be said, therefore, of human beings? And people wonderingly said, without doubt, the kingdom of Rantadeva is made of gold. On such nights, when guests were assembled in the abode of Rantadeva, 120,000 kine were sacrificed for feeding them. And yet the royal cook, adorned with begemmed earrings, had to cry out, saying, eat as much soup as you like, for, of meat, there is not as much today as in other days. Whatever gold was left belonging to Rantadeva, he gave even that remnant away unto the Brahmanas during the progress of one of his sacrifices. In his very sight the gods used to take the libations of clarified butter poured into the fire for them, and the pitris the food that was offered to them, in shraddhas. And all superior Brahmanas used to obtain from him the means of gratifying all their desires. When he died, O Srinjaya, who was superior to thee in respect of the 4 cardinal virtues, and who, superior to thee was, therefore, much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for the latter who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 129:1 The Bengal reading of the second line of the second verse is vicious. At any rate, the Bombay reading is better. 129:2 Animals slain in sacrifices are believed to go to heaven. 129:3 Identified with the modern chambal. 130:1 A kind of vessel used by Brahmanas and others for begging. 130:2 Vaswoksara means made of gold. It is a feminine adjective. The substantive is omitted. I think the passage may mean the city of Rantadeva is made of gold. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 68. Narada said, Dashmanta's son, Bharata, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death. While only a child, living in the forest, he achieved feats incapable of being achieved by others. Endued with great strength, he speedily deprived the very lions, white as snow and armed with teeth and claws, of all their prowess, and dragged them and bound them at his pleasure. He used to check tigers also, that were fiercer and more ruthless than lions, and bring them to subjection. Seizing other beasts of prey possessed of great might, and even huge elephants, dyed with red arsenic and spotted with other liquid minerals by their teeth and tusks, he used to bring them to subjection, causing their mouths to become dry, or obliging them to fly away. Possessed of great might, he used also to drag the mightiest of buffaloes. And in consequence of his strength, he checked proud lions by hundreds, and powerful shramaras and horned rhinoceroses and other animals. Binding them by their necks and crushing them to an inch of their lives, he used to let them go. For those feats of his the regenerate ascetics, with whom he lived, came to call him Sarvadamana, the controller of all. His mother, at last, forbade him from torturing animals in that way. Endued with great prowess, he performed 100 horse sacrifices on the banks of the Yamuna, 300 such sacrifices on the banks of Sarasvati, and 400 on the banks of the Ganga. Having performed these sacrifices, he once more performed 1,000 horse sacrifices and 100 Rajasuyas, great sacrifices, in which his gifts also to the Brahmanas were very profuse. Other sacrifices, again, such as the Agnishtoma, the Adaratra, the Uktha, and the Viswajit, he performed together with thousands and thousands of Vajapayas, and completed without any impediment. The son of Sakuntala, having performed all these, gratified the Brahmanas with presents of wealth. Possessed of great fame, Bharata then gave 10,000 billions of coins, made of the most pure gold, unto Kanwa, who had brought up his mother Sakuntala as his own daughter. The gods with Indra at their head, accompanied by the Brahmanas, coming to his sacrifice, set up his sacrificial stake made entirely of gold, and measuring in width 100 vyamas. And imperial Bharata, of noble soul, that victor over all foes, that monarch never conquered by any enemy, gave away unto the Brahmanas beautiful horses and elephants and cars, decked with gold, and beautiful gems of all kinds, and camels and goats and sheep, and slaves male and female and wealth, and grains and milch cows with calves, and villages and fields, and diverse kinds of robes, numbering by millions and millions. When he died, O Sranjaya, who was superior to thee in respect of the 4 cardinal virtues, and who superior to thee was, therefore, much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for the latter who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 131:1a Vyama is the space between the two arms extended at their furthest. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 69. Narada said, Vena's son, King Prithu, O Sranjaya, we hear, fell a prey to death, and the Rajasuya sacrifice he performed, the great rishis installed him as emperor of the world. He vanquished all, and his achievements became known all over the world. For this he came to be called Prithu, the celebrated. And because he protected all people from wounds and injuries, for this he became a true Kshatriya. Beholding Vena's son, Prithu, all his subjects said, We are highly pleased with him. In consequence of this affection that he enjoyed of his subjects, he came to be called a Raja. During the time of Prithu, the earth, without being cultivated, yielded crops in sufficiency. All the kine, again, yielded milk whenever they were touched. Every lotus was full of honey. The kusa blades were all of gold, agreeable to the touch, and otherwise delightful. And the subjects of Prithu made clothes of these blades, and the beds also on which they lay. All the fruits were soft and sweet, and like unto amrita in taste. And these constituted the food of his subjects, none amongst whom had ever to starve. And all men in Prithu's time were hale and hearty. And all their wishes were crowned with fruition. They had nothing to fear. On trees, or in caves, they dwelt as they liked. His dominions were not distributed into provinces and towns. The people lived happily and in joy as each desired. When King Prithu went to the sea, the waves became solid. The very mountains used to yield him openings that he might pass through them. The standard of his car never broke, obstructed by anything. Once on a time, the tall trees of the forest, the mountains, the gods, the asuras, men, the snakes, the 7 rishis, the apsaras, and the pitris, all came to Prithu, seated at his ease, and addressing him, said, "Thou art our emperor. Thou art our king. Thou art our protector and father. Thou art our lord. Therefore, O great king, give us boons after our own hearts, through which we may, forever, obtain gratification and joy." Unto them Prithu, the son of Vena, said, "So be it." Then taking up his Ajagava bow and some terrible arrows the like of which existed not, he reflected for a moment. He then addressed the earth, saying, "Coming quickly, O earth, yield to these the milk they desire. From that, blessed be thou, I will give them the food they solicit." Thus addressed by him, the earth said, "It behoveth thee, O hero, to regard me as thy daughter." Prithu answered, "So be it," and then that great ascetic, his passions under control, made all arrangements for milking the earth. Then the entire assemblage of creatures began to milk the earth. And first of all, the tall trees of the forest rose for milking her. The earth then, full of affection, stood there desiring a calf, a milker, and vessels wherein to hold the milk. Then the blossoming sala became the calf, the banyan became the milker, torn buds became the milk, and the auspicious fig tree became the vessel. Next, the mountains milked her. The eastern hill, whereon the sun rises, became the calf, the prince of mountains, viz., Meru, became the milker, the diverse gems and deciduous herbs became the milk, and the stones became the vessels for holding that milk. Next, one of the gods became the milker, and all things capable of bestowing energy and strength became the coveted milk. The asuras then milked the earth, having wine for their milk, and using an unbaked pot for their vessel. In that act, Dwamurdhan became the milker, and Virakana, the calf. The human beings milked the earth for cultivation and crops. The self-created Manu became their calf, and Prithu himself the milker. Next, the snakes milked the earth, getting poison as the milk, and using a vessel made of a gourd. Dhritarashtra became the milker, and Takshaka the calf. The 7 rishis, capable of producing everything by their fiat, then milked the earth, getting the Vedas as their milk. Vrihaspati became the milker, the Chandas were the vessel, and the excellent Soma, the calf. The Yikshas, milking the earth, got the power of disappearance at will as the milk in an unbaked pot. Vaishravana, Kuvara, became their milker, and Vrishadvaja their calf. The Gandharvas and the Apsaras milked all fragrant perfumes in a vessel made of a lotus leaf. Chitraratha became their calf, and the puissant Viswaruchi their milker. The Pitris milked the earth, getting Svaha as their milk in a vessel of silver. Yama, the son of Vivasvat, became their calf, and the destroyer Antaka their milker. Even thus was the earth milked by that assemblage of creatures who all got for milk what they each desired. The very calves and vessels employed by them are existing to this day, and may always be seen. The powerful Prithu, the son of Vina, performing various sacrifices, gratified all creatures in respect of all their desires by gifts of articles agreeable to their hearts. And he caused golden images to be made of every article on earth, and bestowed them all on the Brahmanas as his great horse sacrifice. The king caused 66,000 elephants to be made of gold, and all those he gave away unto the Brahmanas. And this whole earth also the king caused to be decked with jewels and gems and gold, and gave her away unto the Brahmanas. When he died, O Sranjaya, who was superior to thee as regards the four cardinal virtues, and who, superior to thee, was, therefore, much superior to thy son, thou shouldst not, saying, O Swagya, grieve for the latter who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. Footnotes 132:1 Literally, a kshatriya is one that rescues another from wounds and injuries. 132:2 A Raja is one who enjoys the affection of his people, and with whom they are delighted. 132:3 The bow of Shiva, otherwise called Panaka. 133:1 Aklishtakarman, literally, one who is never fatigued with work, hence one capable of obtaining the results of action by a mere fiat of the will. It may also mean of unspotted acts. 133:2 Parthivas, i.e., relating to the earth. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 70. Narada said, even the great ascetic Rama, the hero worshipped by all heroes, that son of Jamadagni, of great fame, will die, without being contented with the period of his life. Rooting out all evils from the earth, he caused the primeval yuga to set in. Having obtained unrivaled prosperity, no fault could be seen in him. His father having been slain and his calf having been stolen by the Kshatriyas, he without any boast slew Kartavirya, who had never been vanquished before by foes. With his bow he slew 64 times 10,000 Kshatriyas already within the jaws of death. In that slaughter were included 14,000 Brahmana-hating Kshatriyas of the Dantakura country, all of whom he slew. Of the Haihayas, he slew 1,000 with his short club, 1,000 with his sword, and 1,000 by hanging. Heroic warriors, with their cars, steeds, and elephants, lay dead on the field, slain by the wise son of Jamadagni, enraged at the slaughter of his father. And Rama, on that occasion, slew 10,000 Kshatriyas with his axe. He could not quietly bear the furious speeches uttered by those foes of his. And when many foremost of Brahmins uttered exclamations, mentioning the name of Rama of Bhrigu's race, then the valiant son of Jamadagni, proceeding against the Kashmiras, the Daradas, the Kuntis, the Kshudrakas, the Malavas, the Angas, the Vangas, the Kalingas, the Videhas, the Tamraliptikas, the Rakshovahas, the Vidahotras, the Trigardas, the Mardakavadas, counting by 1,000, slew them all by means of his whetted shafts. Proceeding from province to province, 5 thus slew thousands of crores of Kshatriyas, creating a deluge of blood and filling many lakes also with blood as red as Indrajapakas or the wild fruit called Vandujaiva, and bringing all the 18 islands, of which the earth is composed, under his subjection. That son of Bhrigu's race performed 100 sacrifices of great merit, all of which he completed, and in all of which the presents he made unto the Brahmanas were profuse. The sacrificial altar, 18 nalas high, made entirely of gold, and constructed according to the ordinance, full of diverse kinds of jewels and gems, and decked with hundreds of standards, and this earth abounding in domestic and wild animals, were accepted by Kasyapa as sacrificial present made unto him by Rama, the son of Jamadagni. And Rama also gave him many thousand prodigious elephants, all adorned with gold. Indeed, freeing the earth from all robbers, and making her teem with honest and graceful inhabitants, Rama gave her away to Kasyapa at his great horse sacrifice. Having divested the earth of Kshatriyas for 21 times, and having performed hundreds of sacrifices, the puissant hero gave away the earth to the Brahmanas. And it was Marichi, Kasyapa, who accepted from him the earth with her 7 islands. Then Kasyapa said unto Rama, Go out of the earth, at my command. At the word of Kasyapa, the foremost of warriors, desirous of obeying the Brahmana's behest, caused by his arrows the very ocean to stand aside, and repairing to that best of mountains called Mahendra, continued to live there. Even that enhancer of the fame of the Bhrigus, possessed of such numberless virtues, that famous son of Jamadagni, of great splendor, will die. Superior to thy son, even he will die. Do not, therefore, grieve for thy son who performed no sacrifice and made no sacrificial present. All these, superior to thee as regards the 4 cardinal virtues, and as regards also 100 other merits, all these foremost of men, have died, O Srinjaya, and they that are like them will also die. Footnotes 134:1. The first line of the verse, I think, has been correctly explained by Nilkantha. The paraphrase is Ye imam bhumam sukham kurvan adium, i.e. adium yugam anyapariety SMA. 134:2. The Bombay text adds some verses here which do not occur in the Bengal texts. 134:3. P. Sinha makes a ludicrous blunder in reading this line. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 71. Vyasa said, hearing this sacred history of 16 kings, capable of enhancing the period of life of the listener, King Srinjaya remained silent without saying anything. The illustrious Rishi Narada then said unto him, thus sitting silent, O thou of great splendor, hast thou heard those histories recited by me, and hast thou caught their purport? Or are all these lost like Shraddha as performed by a person of regenerate classes having a Sudra wife? Thus addressed, Srinjaya then replied with joined hands, O thou that hast wealth of asceticism, having listened to these excellent and praiseworthy histories of ancient royal sages, all of whom had performed great sacrifices with profuse presents unto the Brahmanas, my grief hath all been dispelled by wonder, like the darkness that is dispelled by the rays of the sun. I have now been cleansed of my sins, and I do not feel any pain now. Tell me, what shall I do now? Narada said, By good luck it is that thy grief hath been dispelled. Solicit thou the boon that thou desirest. Thou wilt obtain all thou mayst ask. We never say what is not true. Srinjaya said, I am happy with even this, viz., that thou, O Holy One, art gratified with me. He with whom thou, O Holy One, art gratified, hath nothing unobtainable here. Narada said, I will once more give thee thy son who was fruitlessly slain by the robbers, like an animal, slaughtered in sacrifice, taking him out of terrible hell. Vyasa said, Then the son of Srinjaya, of wonderful splendor, appeared, that child resembling the son of Kuvera himself, bestowed by the gratified Rishi on the bereaved father. And King Srinjaya, once more meeting with his son, became highly delighted. And he performed many meritorious sacrifices, giving away profuse sacrificial presents upon completion. Srinjaya's son had not fulfilled the purposes of his being. He had performed no sacrifice and had no children. Destitute of bravery, he had perished miserably and not in battle. It was for this reason that he could be brought back into life. As regards Abhimanyu, he was brave and heroic. He hath fulfilled the purposes of life, for the brave son of Subhadra, having blasted his foes by thousands, hath left the world, falling in the field of battle. Those inaccessible regions that are attainable by Brahmacharya, by knowledge, by acquaintance with the Scriptures, by foremost of sacrifices, even these have been obtained by thy Son. Men of knowledge always desire heaven by their righteous deeds. They that are living in heaven never prefer this world to heaven. Therefore, it is not easy for any desirable thing that might have been unattained by him to bring back into the world Arjuna's son slain in battle and now residing in heaven. Thy Son has attained to that eternal goal which is attained by yogins with eyes shut in contemplation, or by performers of great sacrifices, or people possessed of great ascetic merit. After death, attaining a new body, that hero is shining like a king in his own immortal rays. Indeed, Abhimanyu has once more got his own body of lunar essence that is desirable by all regenerate persons. He deserveth not thy grief. Knowing this, be quiet, and slay thy foes. Let fortitude be thine. O sinless one, it is the living that stand in need of our grief, and not they that have attained to heaven. His sins increase, O king, for whom the living grieve. Therefore, he that is wise, abandoning grief, should strive for the benefit of the dead. The living man should think of the joy, the glory, and the happiness of the dead. Knowing this, the wise never indulge in grief, for grief is painful. Know this to be true. Rise up. Strive to achieve thy purpose. Do not grieve. Thou hast heard of the origin of death, and her unexampled penances, as also the impartiality of her behavior towards all creatures. Thou hast heard that prosperity is unstable. Thou hast heard how the dead son of Srinjaya was revived. O learned king, do not grieve. Peace be to thee, I go. Having said this, the holy Vyasa disappeared then and there. Upon the departure of that master of speech, that foremost of intelligent persons, viz. the holy Vyasa, whose color was like that of the clouded sky, Yudhishthira, having derived consolation in consequence of what he had heard about the sacrificial merit and prosperity of these great monarchs of olden times, possessed of energy equal to that of the great Indra himself, and all of whom had acquired wealth by righteous means, mentally applauded those illustrious persons and became freed from grief. Once more, however, with a melancholy heart he asked himself, saying, "What shall we say unto the Nanjaya?" Footnotes 136:1 Sanahikas, i.e., clad in mail. 136:2 The Bengal reading Dvijaditam is certainly better than the Bombay reading Dvijakaitam, although Nilkantha explains Yukatam as Abhimatam. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 72. Sanjaya said, when that terrible day, so fraught with the slaughter of creatures, departed, and when the sun set, the beautiful twilight of the evening spread itself. The troops, O bull of Bharata's race, of both parties, had retired to their tents. Then the eight-bannered Jishnu, having slain a large number of Samsaptakas by means of his celestial weapons, proceeded towards his tent, mounted on that victorious car of his. And as he was proceeding, he asked Govinda, with voice choked with tears, "Why is my heart afraid, O Kesava, and why both my speech falter? Evil omens encounter me, and my limbs are weak. Thoughts of disaster possess my mind without living it. On earth, on all sides, various omens strike me with fear. Of many kinds are those omens and indications, and seen everywhere, foreboding dire calamity. Is it all right with my venerable superior, viz., the king with all his friends?" Vasudeva said, "It is evident that everything is right with thy brother and his friends. Do not grieve, some trifling evil in another direction will happen." Sanjaya continued, "Then those two heroes, viz., Krishna and Arjuna, having adored the twilight, mounted on their car and proceeded, talking of the day's battle so destructive of heroes. Having achieved feats exceedingly difficult of accomplishment, Vasudeva and Arjuna, at last, reached the Pandava encampment. Then that slayer of hostile heroes, viz., Vibhatsu, beholding the camp joyless and melancholy and everything to be in confusion, addressed Krishna with an agonized heart, and said, O Janardana, no auspicious trumpet blows today, its blasts mingled with the beat of drums and the loud blare of conchs. The sweet veena also is nowhere played upon in accompaniment with slapping of palms. Auspicious and delightful songs fraught with praise are nowhere recited or sung by our bards amongst the troops. The warriors also all recede hanging down their heads. They do not tell me beholding me, as before, of the feats achieved by them. O Madhava, is it all right with my brothers today? Beholding our own men plunged in grief, I know no peace. Is it all right, O giver of honors, with the ruler of the Panchalas, or Virata, or all our warriors, O thou of unfading glory? Alas, Subhadra's son, ever cheerful, doth not today, with his brothers, come out with smiles to receive me returning from battle. Sanjaya said, thus conversing, those two, viz., Krishna and Arjuna, entered their own camp. And they saw that the Pandavas, all cheerless, were sitting, plunged in great grief. Beholding his brothers and sons, the eight-banded Arjuna became very cheerless. Not seeing the son of Subhadra there, Arjuna said, pale is the color I behold of the faces of you all. I do not, again, see Abhimanyu. Nor doth he come to congratulate me. I heard that Drona had today formed the circular array. None amongst you, save the boy Abhimanyu, could break that array. I, however, did not teach him how to come out of that array, after having pierced it. Did you cause the boy to enter that array? Hath that slayer of heroes, viz., the son of Subhadra, that mighty bowman, having pierced that array, through numberless warriors of the enemy in battle, fallen, at last, in the fight? Oh, tell me, how that hero of mighty arms and red eyes, born, in our line, like a lion on the mountain breast, and equal unto the younger brother of Indra himself, hath fallen on the field of battle. What warrior, deprived on his senses by death, ventured to slay that dear son of Subhadra, that favorite of Draupadi and Kesava, that child ever loved by Kunti? Equal unto the high-souled Vrishni hero, Kesava, himself in prowess and learning and dignity, how hath he been slain on the field of battle? The favorite son of that daughter of the Vrishni race, always cherished by me, alas, if I do not see him I will repair to the abode of Yama. With locks ending in soft curls, of tender years, with eyes like those of a young gazelle, with tread like that of an infuriated elephant, tall like a Sala offshoot, of sweet speech accompanied with smiles, quiet, ever obedient to the behest of his superiors, acting like one of mature years though tender in age, of agreeable speech, reft of vanity, of great courage and great energy, of large eyes resembling lotus petals, kind to those devoted to him, self-restrained, following nothing mean, grateful, possessed of knowledge, accomplished in weapons, unretreating from battle, always delighting in fight, and enhancing the fears of foes, engaged in the welfare of kinsmen, desirous of victory into sires, never striking first, perfectly fearless in battle. Alas, if I do not behold that son, I will repair to the abode of Yama. In the counting of Kar warriors, always reckoned as a Mahabharata, superior to me 1.5 times, of tender years, of mighty arms, even dear to Pradyumna and Kesava and myself, alas, if I do not behold that son I will repair to the abode of Yama. Of beautiful nose, of beautiful forehead, of fair eyes and eyebrows and lips, if I do not behold that face, what peace can my heart have? Melodious as the voice of the male kokila, delightful, and sweet as the warblings of the veena, without listening to his voice, what peace can my heart have? His beauty was unrivaled, rare even among the celestials. Without casting my eyes on that form, what peace can my heart have? Accomplished in saluting his superiors with reverence, and always obedient to the behests of his sires, alas, if I do not behold him, what peace can my heart have? Brave in battle, accustomed to every luxury, deserving of the softest bed, alas, he sleepeth today on the bare earth, as if there is none to take care of him, although he is foremost of those that have protectors to look after them. He on whom, while on his bed, the foremost of beautiful women used to attend, alas, he mangled with shafts, will have inauspicious jackals, prowling over the field, to attend upon him today. He who was formerly roused from his slumbers by singers and bards and panegyrists, alas, he will today be surely awakened by discordant beasts of prey. That beautiful face of his eminently deserved to be shaded by the umbrella, alas, the dust of battlefield will surely befoul today. O child, unfortunate that I am, death forcibly takes thee away from me, who was never satiated with looking at thee. Without doubt, that abode of Yama, which is always the goal of persons of righteous deeds, that delightful mansion, illuminated today by thy own splendors, is rendered exceedingly beautiful by thee. Without doubt, Yama and Varuna and Sadakratu and Kuvara, obtaining thee as a favorite guest, are making much of thy heroic self. Thus indulging in diverse lamentations, like a merchant whose vessel has been sunken. Arjuna, afflicted with great grief, asked Yudhishthira, saying, O, thou of Kuru's race, hath he ascended to heaven, having caused a great slaughter among the enemy and contended with the foremost warriors in the face of battle? Without doubt, while contending single-handed with foremost of warriors, countless in number, and fighting with vigor and resolution, his heart turned towards me from a desire of help. While afflicted by Karna and Drona and Kripa and others with sharp shafts of diverse kinds and bright points, my sons of little strength must have repeatedly thought, my father will in this press be my rescuer. I think, while indulging in such lamentations, he was felled on the ground by cruel warriors. Or, perhaps, when he was begotten by me, when he was the nephew of Madhva, when he was born in Subhadra, he could not have uttered such lamentations. Without doubt, my heart, hard as it is made of the essence of the thunder, since it breaketh not, even though I do not behold that mighty armed hero of red eyes. How could those mighty bowmen of cruel hearts shoot their deep-piercing shafts upon that child of tender years, who, again, was my son and the nephew of Vasudeva? That noble-hearted youth who, coming forward every day, used to congratulate me, alas, why doth he not present himself today to me when I come back having slain the foe? Without doubt, overthrown, he lieth today on the bare earth bathed in blood. Beautifying the earth by his body, he lieth like the sun fallen from the firmament. I grieve for Subhadra, who, hearing of the death and battle of her unretreating son, will, afflicted with sorrow, cast away her life. What will Subhadra missing Abhimanyu say unto me? What also will Draupadi say unto me? Afflicted with grief as they are, what also shall I say unto them? Without doubt, my heart is made of the essence of the thunder, since it breaketh not in 1,000 fragments at the sight of my weeping daughter-in-law, pierced with grief. The leonine shouts of the Dhritarashtra's swelling with pride did, indeed, enter my ears. Krishna also heard Yuyutsu, censuring the heroes of the Dhritarashtra army in these words, Ye mighty Kar warriors, having been unable to vanquish Vibhatsu, and having slain only a child, why do ye rejoice? Why, having done what is disagreeable to those two, viz., Kesava and Arjuna, in battle, why do you enjoy roared like lions, when truly the hour for sorrow is come? The fruits of this sinful deed of yours will soon overtake you. Heinous is the crime perpetrated by you. How long will it not bear its fruits? Rebuking them in these words, the high-souled son of Dhritarashtra by his Vaishya wife went away, casting off his weapons, afflicted with rage and grief. O Krishna, why did you not tell me all this during the battle? I would then have consumed all those car warriors of cruel hearts. Sanjaya continued, then Vasudeva, consoling Partha, who was afflicted with grief on account of his son, who was exceedingly anxious, whose eyes were bathed in tears, and who was, in fact, overwhelmed with this sorrow caused by the slaughter of his child, said unto him, Do not yield so to grief. This is the way of all brave, unretreating heroes, especially of Kshatriyas, whose profession is battle. O foremost of intelligent men, even this is the goal ordained by the authors of our scriptures for unretreating heroes engaged in battle. Death is certain for heroes that do not retreat. There is no doubt that Abhimanyu hath ascended to those regions that are reserved for persons of righteous acts. O bull of Bharata's race, even this is coveted by all that are brave, viz., that they may die in battle, facing their foes. As regards Abhimanyu, he having slain in battle many heroic and mighty princes, hath met with that death in the face of battle which is coveted by heroes. Do not grieve, O tiger among men. The legislators of old have declared this to be the eternal merit of the Kshatriyas, viz., their death in battle. O best of the Bharatas, these brothers of thine are all exceedingly cheerless, as also the king, and these thy friends, seeing thee plunged in grief. O giver of honors, comfort them in consoling words. That which should be is known to thee. It behoveth thee not to grieve. Thus comforted by Krishna of wonderful deeds, Partha then said these words unto all his brothers, with voice choked with sorrow, O Lord of the earth, I desire to hear how the mighty-armed Abhimanyu, how that hero of large eyes, resembling lotus petals, fought. You will see that I will exterminate the foe with his elephants and cars and steeds. I will exterminate in battle those slayers of my son with all their followers and kinsmen. Ye all are accomplished in arms. Ye all were armed with weapons. How then could Subhadra's son be slain, even if it were the wielder of the thunderbolt himself with whom he fought? Alas, if I had known that Pandavas and the Panchalas would be able to protect my son in battle, I myself would have then protected him. Ye were then on your cars, ye were shooting your shafts. Alas, how then could Abhimanyu be slain by the foe, causing a great carnage in your ranks? Alas, ye have no manliness, nor have ye any prowess, since in the very sight of you all was Abhimanyu slain. Or, I should chide my own self, since knowing that ye all are weak, cowardly, and irresolute, I went away. Alas, are your coats of mail and weapons of all kinds only ornaments for decking your persons, and were words given to you only for speaking in assemblies, that ye failed to protect my son, even though ye were clad in mail, armed from head to foot, and even though you had assured me in words of your competence? Having said these words, Partha sat down, holding bow and his excellent sword. Indeed, none could, at that time, even look at Vibhatsu, who then resembled the destroyer himself in wrath, repeatedly drawing deep breaths. None of his friends or kinsmen could venture to look at or speak unto Arjuna, as he sat there exceedingly afflicted with grief on account of his son, and with face bathed in tears. None, indeed, could address him, save Vasudeva or Yudhishthira. These two, under all circumstances, were acceptable to Arjuna. And because they were highly reverenced and dearly loved, therefore, could they alone address him at such times. Then King Yudhishthira, addressing Partha, of eyes like lotus petals, who was then filled with rage and exceedingly afflicted with grief on account of the death of his son, said these words. Footnotes 137:1 Twilight is herself the goddess who is supposed to be adored by certain prayers and on the occasion. 137:2 These slaps mark the cadences. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 73. Yudhishthira said, O mighty armed one, after thou hadst gone towards the army of the Samsaptakas, the preceptor Drona made fierce endeavors for seizing me. We succeeded, however, in resisting Drona at the head of the array at all points, having in that battle disposed our vigorously contending car divisions in counter-array. Held in check by a large number of warriors, and myself also having been well protected, Drona began to smite us with great activity, afflicting us with his whetted shafts. Thus afflicted by him, we could not then even gaze at his army, far less face it in battle. All of us then, addressing thy son by Subhadra, who was equal to thyself, O Lord, and prowess, said unto him, O son, pierce this array of Drona. That valorous hero, thus urged by us, then sought, like a good horse, to take that burden on himself, however unbearable it might have been for him. Endued as he was with thy energy, aided by that knowledge of weapons which he derived from thee, that child then penetrated unto that array, like Garuda penetrating into the ocean. As regards ourselves, we followed that hero, that son of Subhadra, desirous in that battle of penetrating into the Dhritarashtra army by the same path by which Abhimanyu had entered it. Then, O sire, the wretched king of the Sindhus, viz., Jayadratha, in consequence of the boon granted to him by Rudra, checked all of us. Then Drona, Kripa and Karna and Drona's son, and the king of the Kosalas, and Kritavarman, these 6 car warriors surrounded the son of Subhadra. Having surrounded that child, all those great car warriors, too many for him, although he was contending to the utmost of his power, deprived him of his car. After he had been deprived of his car, Dusasana's son, though he himself had a hairbreadth escape, succeeded, as chance would have it, in making Abhimanyu meet with his end. As regards Abhimanyu, he, having slain many thousands of men and steeds and elephants, and 8,000 cars, and once more 900 elephants, 2,000 princes, and a large number of heroic warriors unknown to fame, and dispatching in that battle King Vrihadvala also to heaven, at last, through ill luck, met with his own death. Thus hath occurred this event that so enhances our grief. That tiger among men hath even thus ascended to heaven. Hearing these words uttered by King Yudhishthira, Arjuna, saying, O son, and breathing a deep sigh, fell down on the earth in great pain. Then all the warriors of the Pandavas, surrounding Dhananjaya with cheerless faces, began, filled with grief, to look at one another with winkless eyes. Recovering consciousness then, Vasva's son became furious with rage. He seemed to be in a feverish tremor, and sighed frequently. Squeezing his hands, drawing deep breaths, with eyes bathed in tears, and casting his glances like a madman, he said these words. Arjuna said, Truly do I swear that tomorrow I will slay Jayadratha. If from fear of death he doth not forsake the Dhritarashtras, or implore our protection, or the protection of Krishna, that foremost of men, or of thine, O king, I shall assuredly slay him tomorrow. Forgetting his friendship for me, engaged in doing what is agreeable to Dhritarashtra's son, that wretch is the cause of the child's slaughter. Tomorrow I will slay him. Whoever they may be that will encounter me in battle tomorrow for protecting him, be it Drona or Kripa, O king, I will cover them all with my arrow. Ye bulls among men, if I do not achieve even this in tomorrow's battle, let me not attain the region reserved for the righteous, ye foremost of heroes. Those regions that are for them that slay their mothers, or for them that slay their fathers, or them that violate their preceptors' beds, or them that are vile and wicked, or them that cherish envy against the righteous, or them that speak ill of others, or them that appropriate the wealth confidingly deposited with them by others, or them that are betrayers of trusts, or them that speak ill of wives enjoyed by them before, or them that have slain Brahmanas, or them that have killed kine, or them that eat sugared milk and rice, or food prepared of barley, or pot herbs, or dishes prepared of milk, sesamum, and rice, or thin cakes of powdered barley fried in clarified butter, or other kinds of cakes, or meat, without having dedicated the same to the gods, even those regions shall speedily be mine if I do not slay Jayadratha, those regions to which they go that offer insults to Brahmanas devoted to the study of the Vedas, or otherwise worthy of respect, or to those that are their preceptors, those regions shall speedily be mine if I do not slay Jayadratha. That end which becomes theirs who touch Brahmanas or fire with the feet, that end which becomes theirs who throw phlegm and excreta and eject urine into water, even that miserable end shall be mine, if I do not slay Jayadratha. That end which is his who bathes, in water, in a state of nudity, or his who does not hospitably entertain a guest, that end which is theirs who receive bribes, speak falsehood, and deceive and cheat others, that end which is theirs who offend against their own souls, or who falsely utter praises of others, or of those low wretches who eat sweetmeats in the sight of servants and sons and wives and dependents without sharing the same with those, that awful end shall be mine if I do not slay Jayadratha. That end which overtakes the wretch of ruthless soul who without supporting a righteous and obedient protege casts him off, or him who, without giving unto a deserving neighbor the offerings and shraddhas, giveth them away unto those that deserve them not, that end which is his who drinks wine, or his who insults those that are worthy of respect, or his who is ungrateful, or his who speaketh ill of his brothers, that end shall soon be mine if I do not stay Jayadratha. The end of all those sinful persons whom I have not mentioned, as also of those whom I have mentioned, shall soon be attained by me, if after this night passes away, I do not slay Jayadratha tomorrow. Listen now to another oath of mine. If tomorrow's sun set without my slaying that wretch, then even here I shall enter the blazing fire. Ye Asuras and gods and men, ye birds and snakes, ye Pitris and all wanderers of the night, ye regenerate rishis and celestial rishis, ye mobile and immobile creatures, ye all that I have not mentioned, ye will not succeed in protecting my foe from me. If he enters the abode of the nether region, or ascends the firmament, or repairs to the celestials, or the realms of the Daityas, I shall still, with 100 arrows, assuredly cut off, on the expiration of this night, the head of Abhimanyu's foe. Sanjaya continued, having uttered these words, Arjuna began to stretch Gandiva with both his arms. Transcending Arjuna's voice, the sound of that bow rose and touched the very heavens. After Arjuna had taken that oath, Janardana, filled with wrath, blew his conch, Panchajanya, and Fulguna blew Devdatta. The great conch Panchajanya, well filled with the wind from Krishna's mouth, produced a loud blare. And that blare made the regions of the cardinal and the subsidiary points, the nether regions, and the whole universe, to shake, as it happens at the end of the Yuga. Indeed, after the high-souled Arjuna had taken the oath, the sound of thousands of musical instruments and loud leonine roars arose from the Pandava camp. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 74. Sanjaya said, when the spies of Duryodhana, having heard that loud uproar made by the Pandavas desirous of victory, informed their masters of the cause, Jayadratha, overwhelmed with sorrow, and with heart stupefied with grief, and like one sinking in a fathomless ocean of distress, slowly rose up and having reflected for a long while, proceeded to the assembly of the kings. Reflecting for a while in the presence of those gods among men, Jayadratha, in fear of Abhimanyu's father and covered with shame, said these words: He who in Pandu's soil was begotten by Indra under the influence of desire, that wicked wretch is thinking of dispatching me to the abode of Yama. Blessed be ye, I shall, therefore, go back to my home from desire of life. Or, ye bulls among Kshatriyas, protect me by the force of your weapons. Partha seeks to slay me, ye heroes, render me fearless. Drona and Duryodhana and Kripa and Karna and the ruler of the Madras and Valhika and Dusasana and others are capable of protecting a person who is afflicted by Yama himself. When, however, I am threatened by Fulguna alone, will not all these the lords of earth, will not all of you, joined together, be able to protect me? Having heard the shouts of joy of the Pandavas, great hath been my fear. My limbs, ye lords of earth, have become powerless like those of a person on the point of death. Without doubt, the wielder of Gandiva hath sworn for my death. It is for this that the Pandavas are shouting in joy at a time when they should weep. Let alone the rulers of men, the very gods and Gandharvas, the Asuras, the Uragas, and the Rakshasas cannot venture to baffle a vow of Arjuna. Therefore, ye bulls among men, blessed be ye, give me permission to leave the Kuru camp. I want to make myself scarce. The Pandavas will no longer be able to find me. While indulging in such lamentations, with heart agitated by fear, King Duryodhana, always looking upon the accomplishment of his own business to be preferable to everything else, said unto him these words: Do not fear, O tiger among men. O bull among men, who will seek to encounter thee in battle when thou wilt remain in the midst of these Kshatriya heroes? Myself, Vikartana's son, Karna, Chitrasena, Vivansati, Burishravas, Sala, Salya, the invincible Vrishasena, Parumithra, Jaya, Bhoja, Sudakshina, the ruler of the Kambojas, Satyavrat, the mighty armed, Vikarna, Dharmaka, Dasasana, Subahu, the ruler of the Kalingas, with his weapons upraised, Vinda and Anuvinda of Avanti, Drona, Drona's son, and Suvala's son, Sakuni, Kama, these and numerous other kings will, with their forces, face the battles surrounding thee on all sides. Let the fever of thy heart, therefore, be dispelled. Thou art thyself one of the foremost of Kar warriors. O thou of immeasurable splendor, thou thyself art a hero. Being what thou art, how canst thou then see any cause of fear, O king of the Sindhus? The 11 Akshahinis of troops I own will carefully fight for protecting thee. Therefore, do not fear, O king of the Sindhus. Let thy fears be dispelled. Sanjaya continued, Thus comforted, O monarch, by thy son, the king of the Sindhus then, accompanied by Duryodhana, repaired that very night to Drona, the generalissimo of the Kuru army. Then, O king, having touched Drona's feet with reverence, and taken his seat with humility, he asked the preceptor these words in hitting the aim, in hitting it from a distance, in tightness of hand, and in the force of the stroke, O illustrious one, tell the difference between myself and Fulguna. O preceptor, I wish to know accurately the difference as regards proficiency in the science of arms between myself and Arjuna. Say it unto me truly. Drona said, Of tutorial instruction, both of you, i.e., thyself and Arjuna, have had the same measure, O son. In consequence, however, of yoga and the hard life led by Arjuna, he is superior to thee. Thou shouldst not, however, for any reason, cherish fear of Partha. Without doubt, I will, O son, protect thee from this fear. The very gods cannot prevail over him who is protected by my arms. I will form an array which Partha will not succeed in piercing. Therefore contain thou in battle, do not fear, observing the duties of thy own order. O mighty Kar warrior, tread in the track of thy sires and grandsires. Having duly studied the Vedas, thou hast poured libations, according to the ordinance, into fire. Thou hast also performed many sacrifices. Death cannot, therefore, be an object of terror to thee. For if thou deest, attaining then to that great good fortune which is unattainable by vile men, thou wilt acquire all those excellent regions in heaven that are attainable by the might of one's arms. The Kauravas, the Pandavas, the Vrishnis, and other men, as also myself with my son, are all mortal and short-lived. Think of this. One after another, all of us, slain by time which is all-powerful, shall go to the other world, carrying with us only our respective deeds, those regions that ascetics acquire by undergoing severe penances. Those regions are acquired by heroic Kshatriyas that are observant of the duties of their order. Even thus was the ruler of the Sindhus consoled by Bharadvaja's son. Banishing his fear of Partha, he set his heart on battle. Then, O king, thy troops also felt great delight, and the loud sounds of musical instruments were heard, mingled with leonine shouts. Footnotes 145:1 literally, in crossing. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 75. Sanjaya said, after Partha had vowed the death of the ruler of the Sindhus, the mighty armed Vasudeva addressed Dhananjaya and said, with the consent of thy brothers, alone, but without consulting me, thou hast sworn, saying, I will slay the ruler of the Sindhus. This hath been an act of great rashness on thy part. Without consulting me, thou hast taken up a great weight upon thy shoulders. Alas, how shall we escape the ridicule of all men? I had sent some spies into the camp of Dhritarashtra's son. Those spies, quickly coming unto me, gave me this information, viz., that after thou, O Lord, hadst vowed to slay the ruler of the Sindhus, loud leonine shouts, mingled with the sounds of our musical instruments, were heard by the Dhritarashtras. In consequence of that uproar, the Dhritarashtras, with their well-wishers, became terrified. These leonine shouts are not causeless, thought they, and waited for what would ensue. O thou of mighty arms, an uproarious din then arose amongst the Kauravas, of their elephants and steeds and infantry. And a terrible rattle was also heard of their cars. Having heard of the death of Abhimanyu, Dhananjaya, deeply afflicted, will in wrath come out in the night for battle. Then king, even thus, they waited, ready for battle, while preparing themselves. O thou of eyes like lotus petals, they then learnt truly the vow about the slaughter of the ruler of the Sindhus, made by thee that art wedded to truth. Then all the counselors of Suddhodana became heartless and frightened like little animals. As regards King Jayadratha, that ruler of the Sindhus and the Saviras, overwhelmed with grief and becoming thoroughly cheerless, he stood up and entered his own tent with all his counselors. Having consulted with them about every remedy that could benefit him at a time when he stood in need of consultation, he proceeded to the assembly of the allied kings and there said these words unto Suddhodana: Dhananjaya, thinking me to be the slayer of his son, will tomorrow encounter me in battle. He hath, in the midst of his army, vowed to stay me. That vow of Savyasakan the very gods and Gandharvas and Asuras and Uragas and Rakshasas cannot venture to frustrate. Protect me, therefore, ye all in battle. Let not Dhananjaya, placing his foot on your head, succeed in hitting the mark. Let proper arrangements be made in respect of this matter. Or, if, O delighter of the Kurus, you think that you will not succeed in protecting me in battle, grant me permission then, O king, so that I may return home. Thus addressed, by Jayadratha, Suddhodana became cheerless and sat, hanging down his head. Ascertaining that Jayadratha was in a great fright, Suddhodana began to reflect in silence. Beholding the Kuru king to be greatly afflicted, King Jayadratha, the ruler of the Sindhus, slowly said these words having a beneficial reference to himself: I do not behold here that bowman of superior energy who can baffle with his arms the weapons of Arjuna in great battle. Who, even if it be Satakrata himself, will stay in front of Arjuna having Vasudeva for his ally, while wielding the bow Gandiva. It is heard that Lord Mahesvara himself of supreme energy had been encountered, before this, by Partha on foot, on the mountains of Himvat. Urged by the chief of the Celestials, he slew on a single car 1,000 Danavas dwelling in Hiranyapura. That son of Kunti is now allied with Vasudeva of great intelligence. I think that he is competent to destroy the three worlds, including the very gods. I wish that you will either grant me permission to leave the field for my home, or that the high-souled and heroic Drona with his son will protect me. Or, I would await thy pleasure, O Arjuna. Thus addressed by Jayadratha, King Suyoddhana humbly beseeched the preceptor in this matter. All remedial measures have been adopted. Cars and steeds have been arranged. Karna and Purusharthas, and Drona's son, and the invincible Vrishasena, and Kripa, and the ruler of the Madras, these 6 will be in Jayadratha's van. Drona will form an array, half of which will be a sakata and half a lotus. In the middle of the leaves of that lotus will be a needle-mouthed array. Jayadratha, that ruler of the Sindhus, difficult of being conquered in battle, will take his stand by it, protected by heroes. In the use of the bow, in weapons, in prowess, in strength, and also in lineage, those 6 car warriors, O Partha, are without doubt exceedingly difficult of being born. Without first vanquishing those 6 car warriors, access to Jayadratha will not to be had. Think, O Arjuna, of the prowess of each of those 6, O tiger among men. When united together, they are not capable of being easily vanquished. We should, therefore, once again, take counsel with well-wishing counselors, conversant with policy, for our benefit and for the success of our object. Footnotes 146:1 The Bengal reading Satyavratav in the first line of 9 is vicious. I adopt the Bombay reading Satyaratas, qualifying Tara. To suppose that Krishna paid such a compliment to the Kauravas as is implied by the Bengal reading is an absurdity. 146:2 i.e. added his voice to that of Jayadratha, requesting Drona to protect the latter. 147:1 A kind of car or vehicle. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 76. Arjuna said, These 6 car warriors of the Dhritarashtra army, whom thou regardest to be so strong, their united energy, I think, is not equal to even half of mine. Thou shalt see, O slayer of Madhu, the weapons of all these cut off and baffled by me when I go against them for slaying Jayadratha. In the very sight of Drona and all his men, I will fell the head of the ruler of the Sindhus on the earth, beholding which they will indulge in lamentations. If the Siddhas, the Rudras, the Vasus, with the Ashwins, the Maruts with Indra at their head, the Viswadevas with other gods, the Pitris, the Gandharvas, Garuda, the ocean, the mountains, the firmament, heaven, earth, the point of the compass, cardinal and subsidiary, and the regents of those points, all the creatures that are domestic and all that are wild, in fact, if all the mobile and the immobile beings together become the protectors of the ruler of the Sindhus, yet, O slayer of Madhu, shalt thou behold Jayadratha slain by me tomorrow in battle with my arrows. O Krishna, I swear by truth, I touch my weapons, and swear by them that I shall, O Kesava, at the very outset, encounter that Drona, that mighty bowman, who hath become the protector of that sinful wretch Jayadratha. Suyoddhana thinks that this game of battle resteth on Drona. Therefore, piercing through the very van commanded by Drona himself, I shall get at Jayadratha. Thou shalt tomorrow behold the mightiest of bowmen riven by me in battle by means of my shafts endued with fierce energy, like summits of a hill riven by the thunder. Blood shall flow, in torrents, from the breasts of fallen men and elephants and steeds, split open by whetted shafts failing fast upon them. The shaft shot from Gandiva, fleet as the mind or the wind, will deprive thousands of men and elephants and steeds of life. Men will behold in tomorrow's battle those weapons which I have obtained from Yama and Kaurava and Varuna and Indra and Rudra. Thou shalt behold in tomorrow's battle the weapons of all those who come to protect the ruler of the Sindhus, baffled by me with my Brahma weapon. Thou shalt in tomorrow's battle, O Kesva, behold the earth strewn by me with the heads of kings cut off by the force of my shafts. Tomorrow I shall gratify all cannibals, rout the foe, gladden my friends, and crush the ruler of the Sindhus. A great offender, one who hath not acted like a relative, born in a sinful country, the ruler of the Sindhu, slain by me, will sadden his own. Thou shalt behold that ruler of the Sindhus, of sinful behavior, and brought up in every luxury, pierced by me with my shafts. On the morrow, O Krishna, I shall do that which shall make Suryodhana think that there is no other bowman in the world who is equal to me. My Gandiva is a celestial bow. I myself am the warrior. O bull among men! Thou, O Hrishikesa, art the charioteer. What is that I will not be able to vanquish? Through thy grace, O Holy One, what is there unattainable by me in battle? Knowing my prowess to be incapable of being resisted, why, O Hrishikesa, dost thou yet rebuke me? As Lakshmi is ever present in Soma, as water is ever present in the ocean, know this, O Janardana, that even so is my vow ever accomplished. Do not think lightly of my weapons. Do not think lightly of my tough bow. Do not think lightly of the might of my arms. Do not think lightly of the Nanjaya. I shall go to battle in such a way that I shall truly win and not lose. When I have vowed it, know that Jayadratha hath already been slain in battle. Verily, in the Brahmana is truth, verily, in the righteous is humility, verily, in sacrifice is prosperity, verily, in Narayana is victory. Sanjaya continued, having said these words unto Hrishikesa, the son of Vasudeva, having himself said so unto his own self, Arjuna in a deep voice once more addressed Lord Kesva, saying, Thou shouldst, O Krishna, so act that my car may be well equipped as soon as this night dawns, since grave is the task that is at hand. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 77. Sanjaya said, both Vasudeva and Dhananjaya, afflicted with sorrow and grief and frequently sighing like two snakes, got no sleep that night. Understanding that both Nara and Narayana were in rage, the gods with Vasva became very anxious, thinking, what will come of it? Fierce winds, that were again dry and foreboded danger, began to blow. And a headless trunk and a mace appeared on the disk of the sun. And although it was cloudless, frequent thunders were heard, of loud report, mixed with flashes of lightning. The earth with her mountains and waters and forests shook. The seas, those habitation of Makaras, swelled, O king, in agitation. The rivers ran in directions opposite to their usual course. The nether and upper lips of car warriors and steeds and men and elephants began to tremble. And as if for gladdening the cannibals, on that occasion foreboding a great accession of population to the domain of Yama, the animals, on the field, began to eject urine and excreta, and utter loud cries of woe. Beholding these fierce omens that made the hair stand on end, and hearing also of the fierce vow of the mighty Arjuna, all thy warriors, O bull of Bharata's race, became exceedingly agitated. Then the mighty armed son of Pakasasana said unto Krishna, Go, and comfort thy sister Subhadra with her daughter-in-law. And, O Madhava, let also that daughter-in-law and her companions be comforted by thee, O Lord, comfort them with soothing words that are again fraught with truth. Thus addressed, Vasudeva, with a cheerless heart, wending to Arjuna's abode, began to comfort his sorrowing sister afflicted with grief on account of the death of her son. Vasudeva said, O lady of Vrishni's race, do not grieve with thy daughter-in-law for thy son. Timid one, all creatures have but one end ordained by time. The end thy son hath met with that becometh a hero of proud lineage, especially who is a kshatriya. Do not, therefore, grieve. By good luck it is that mighty Kar warrior of great wisdom, of prowess equal to that of his father, hath, after the kshatriya custom, met with an end that is coveted by heroes. Having vanquished numberless foes, and dispatched them unto Yama's presence, he hath himself repaired to those eternal regions, that grant the fruition of every wish, and that are for the righteous. Thy son hath attained that end which the righteous attain by penance, by brahmacharya, by knowledge of the scriptures, and by wisdom. The mother of a hero, the wife of a hero, the daughter of a hero, and a kinsman of heroes, O amiable one, grieve not thou for thy son who hath obtained the supreme end. The wretched ruler of the Sindhus, O beautiful lady, that murderer of a child, that perpetrator of a sinful act, shall, with his friends and kinsmen, obtain the fruit of this arrogance of his on the expiry of this night. Even if he enters the abode of Indra himself, he will not escape from the hands of Partha. Tomorrow thou shalt hear that the head of the Sindhus hath, in battle, been cut off from his trunk to roll on the outskirts of Samantapanchaka. Dispel thy sorrow, and do not grieve. Keeping the duties of a kshatriya before him, thy brave son hath attained the end of the righteous, that end, viz., which we here expect to obtain, as also others that bear arms as a profession. Of broad chest, mighty arms, unreturning, a crusher of Kar warriors, thy son, O beautiful lady, hath gone to heaven. Drive away this fever of thy heart. Obedient to his sires and maternal relations, that heroic and mighty Kar warriors of great prowess hath fallen a prey to death, after having slain thousands of foes. Comfort thy daughter-in-law, O queen. Do not grieve too much, O kshatriya lady. Drive away thy grief, O daughter, as thou shalt hear such agreeable news on the morrow. That which Partha hath vowed must be accomplished. It cannot be otherwise. That which is sought to be done by thy husband can never remain unaccomplished. Even if all human beings and snakes and pisachas and all the wanderers of the night and birds and all the gods and the asuras help the ruler of the Sindhus on the field of battle, he shall still, with them, cease to exist tomorrow. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 78. Sanjaya said, hearing these words of the high-souled Kesava, Subhadra, afflicted with grief on account of the death of her son, began to indulge in these piteous lamentations. O son of my wretched self, O thou that wast in prowess equal to thy father! O child, how couldst thou perish, going to battle? Alas, how doth that face of thine which resembleth the blue lotus, and is graced with beautiful teeth and excellent eyes, now seem, now that, O child, it is covered with battle's dust? Without doubt, thee so brave and unreturning, thee fallen on the field, with beautiful head and neck and arms, with broad chest, low belly, thy limbs decked with ornaments, thee that art endued with beautiful eyes, thee that art mangled with weapon wounds, thee all creatures are, without doubt, beholding as the rising moon. Alas, thou whose bed used to be overlaid with the whitest and costliest sheets, alas, deserving as thou art of every luxury, how dost thou sleep today on the bare earth, thy body pierced with arrows? That hero of mighty arms who used of old to be waited upon by the foremost of beautiful women, alas, how can he, fallen on the field of battle, pass his time now in the company of jackals? He who of old was praised with hymns by singers and bards and panegyrists, alas, he is today greeted by fierce and yelling cannibals and beasts of prey. By whom, alas, hast thou been helplessly slain when thou hadst the Pandavas, O Lord, and all the Panchalas, for thy protectors? O son, O sinless one, I am not yet gratified with looking at thee. Wretched as I am, it is evident that I shall have to go to Yama's abode. When again shall I cast my eyes on that face of thine, adorned with large eyes and beautiful locks, that smooth face without pimples, from which sweet words and exquisite fragrance constantly issued? Fie on the strength of Bhimacena, on the bowmanship of Partha, on the prowess of the Vrishni heroes, and the might of the Panchalas. Fie on the Kaikyas, the Chaitya's, the Matsyas, and the Srinjayas, they that could not protect thee, O hero, while engaged in battle. I behold the earth today to be vacant and cheerless. Without seeing my Abhimanyu, my eyes are troubled with affliction. Thou wast the sister's son of Vasudeva, the son of the wielder of Gandiva, and thyself, a hero and an Adaratha. Alas, how shall I behold the slain? Alas, O hero, thou hast been to me like a treasure in a dream that is seen and lost. Oh, everything human is as transitory as a bubble of water. This thy young wife is overwhelmed with grief on account of the evil that hath befallen thee. Alas, how shall I comfort her who is even like a cow without her calf? Alas, O son, thou hast prematurely fled from me at a time when thou wast about to bear fruit of greatness, although I am longing for a sight of thee. Without doubt, the conduct of the destroyer cannot be understood even by the wise, since although thou hast Kesva for thy protector, thou wast yet slain, as if thou wast perfectly helpless. O son, let that end be thine which is theirs that perform sacrifices, and theirs that are brahmanas of purified soul, and theirs that have practiced brahmacharya, and theirs that have bathed in sacred waters, and theirs that are grateful and charitable and devoted to the service of their preceptors, and theirs that have made sacrificial presents in profusion. That end which is theirs that are brave and unretreating while engaged in battle, or theirs that have fallen in battle, having slain their foes, let that end be thine. That auspicious end which is theirs that have given away 1,000 kine, or theirs that have given away in sacrifices, or theirs that give away houses and mansions agreeable to the recipients, that end which is theirs that give away gems and jewels to deserving brahmanas, or theirs that are punishers of crime, oh, let that end be thine. That end which is attained by means of rigid vows by brahmacharya, or that which is attained by those women that adhere to but one husband, O son, let that end be thine. That eternal end which is attained by kings by means of good behavior, or by those persons that have cleansed themselves by leading, one after another, all the four modes of life, and through due observance of their duties, that end which is theirs that are compassionate to the poor and the distressed, or theirs that equitably divide sweets amongst themselves and their dependents, or theirs that are never addicted to deceit and wickedness, O son, let that end be thine. That end which is theirs that are observant of vows, or theirs that are virtuous, or theirs that are devoted to the service of preceptors, or theirs that have never sent away a guest unentertained, O son, let that end be thine. That end which is theirs that succeed in distress and the most difficult straits in preserving the equanimity of their souls, however much scorched they might be by the fire of grief, O son, let that end be thine. O son, let that end be thine which is theirs that are always devoted to the service of their fathers and mothers, or theirs that are devoted to their own wives only. O son, let that end be thine which is attained by those wise men who, restraining themselves from the wives of others, seek the companionship of only their own wives in season. O son, let that end be thine which is theirs that look upon all creatures with an eye of peace, or theirs that never give pain to others, or theirs that always forgive. O son, let that end be thine which is theirs that abstain from honey, meat, wine, pride, and untruth, or theirs that have refrained from giving pain to others. Let that goal be thine which they attain that are modest, acquainted with all the scriptures, content with knowledge, and have their passions under control. And while cheerless Subhadra, afflicted with grief, was indulging in such lamentations, the princess of Panchala, Draupadi, accompanied by Virata's daughter, Uttara, came to her. All of them, in great grief, wept copiously and indulged in heart-rending lamentations. And like persons reft of reason by sorrow, they fainted away and fell down on the earth. Then Krishna, who stood, ready with water, deeply afflicted, sprinkled it over his weeping, unconscious and trembling sister, pierced in her very heart, and comforting her, said what should be said on such an occasion. And the lotus-eyed one said, "Grieve not, O Subhadra. O Panchali, console Uttara. Abhimanyu, that bull among Kshatriyas, hath obtained the most laudable goal. O thou of beautiful face, let all the other men yet alive in our race obtain that goal which Abhimanyu of great fame hath obtained. Ourselves with all our friends wish to achieve, in this battle, that feat, the like of which, O lady, thy son, that mighty car warrior, hath achieved without any assistance." Having consoled his sister and Draupadi and Uttara thus, that chastiser of foes, viz. the mighty-armed Krishna, returned to Partha's side. Then Krishna, saluting the kings, friends, and Arjuna, entered the inner apartments of the latter's tent, while those kings also repaired to respective abodes. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 79. Sanjaya said, "Then Lord Kesava, of eyes like lotus petals, having entered the unrivaled mansion of Arjuna, touched water, and spread, for Arjuna, on the auspicious and even floor an excellent bed of kusa blades that were of the hue of the lapis lazuli. And keeping excellent weapons around that bed, he adorned it duly with garlands of flowers and fried paddy, perfumes, and other auspicious articles. And after Partha, also, had touched water, meek and submissive attendants brought the usual nightly sacrifice to the three-eyed Mahadeva. Then Partha, with a cheerful soul, having smeared Madhava with perfumes and adorned with floral garlands, presented unto Mahadeva the nightly offering. Then Govinda, with a faint smile, addressed Partha, saying, "Blessed be thou, O Partha, lay thyself down, I leave thee." Placing doorkeepers then, and also sentinels well armed, blessed Kesava, followed by his charioteer, Daruka, repaired to his own tent. He then laid himself down on his white bed, and thought of diverse measures to be adopted. And the illustrious one, Kesava, of eyes like lotus petals, began for Partha's sake to think of various means that would dispel Partha's grief and anxiety and enhance his prowess and splendor. Of soul wrapped in yoga, that supreme lord of all, viz., Vishnu of widespread fame, who always did what was agreeable to Jishnu, desirous of benefiting Arjuna, lapsed into yoga and meditation. There was none in the Pandava camp who slept that night. Wakefulness possessed every one, O monarch. And everybody, in the Pandava camp, thought of this, viz. Kama the high-souled wielder of Gandiva, burning with grief for the death of his son, hath suddenly vowed the slaughter of the Sindhus. How, indeed, will that slayer of hostile heroes, that son of Vasva, that mighty armed warrior, accomplish his vow? The high-souled son of Pandu hath, indeed, made a most difficult resolve. King Jayadratha is endued with mighty energy. Oh, let Arjuna succeed in fulfilling his vow. Difficult is that vow which he, afflicted with grief on account of his son, hath made. Duryodhana's brothers are all possessed of great prowess. His forces also are countless. The son of Dhritarashtra hath assigned all these to Jayadratha as his protectors. Oh, let Dhananjaya come back to the camp, having slain the ruler of the Sindhus in battle. Vanquishing his foes, let Arjuna accomplish his vow. If he fails to slay the ruler of the Sindhus tomorrow, he will certainly enter into blazing fire. Dhananjaya, the son of Pritha, will not falsify his oath. If Arjuna dies, how will the son of Dharma succeed in recovering his kingdom? Indeed, Yudhishthira, the son of Pandu, hath reposed, all his hopes of victory of Arjuna. If we have achieved any religious merit, if we have ever poured libations of clarified butter into fire, let Vyasa, aided by the fruits thereof, vanquish all his foes. Thus talking, O Lord, with one another about the victory of the morrow, that long night, O King, of theirs, at last, passed away. In the middle of the night, Janardana, having awaked, remembered Partha's vow, and addressing his charioteer, Daruka, said, Arjuna, in grief for the death of his son, hath vowed, O Daruka, that before tomorrow's sun goes down he will slay Jayadratha. Hearing of this, Duryodhana will assuredly take counsel with his counselors about how Partha may fail to achieve his object. His several Akshahinis of troops will protect Jayadratha. Fully conversant with the ways of applying all weapons, Drona also, with his son, will protect him. That matchless hero, the thousand-eyed, Indra himself, that crusher of the pride of Daityas and Danavas, cannot venture to slay him in battle who is protected by Drona. I, therefore, will do that tomorrow by which Arjuna, the son of Kunti, may slay Jayadratha before the sun sets. My wives, my kinsmen, my relatives, none amongst these is dearer to me than Arjuna. O Daruka, I shall not be able to cast my eyes, even for a single moment, on the earth bereft of Arjuna. I tell thee, the earth shall not be reft to Arjuna. Myself vanquishing them all with their steeds and elephants by putting forth my strength for the sake of Arjuna, I will slay them with Karna and Suryodhana. Let the three worlds tomorrow behold my prowess in great battle, when I put forth my valor, O Daruka, for Dhananjaya's sake. Tomorrow thousands of kings and hundreds of princes, with their steeds and cars and elephants, will, O Daruka, fly away from battle. Thou shalt tomorrow, O Daruka, behold that army of kings overthrown and crushed with my discus, by myself in wrath for the sake of the son of Pandu. Tomorrow the three worlds with the gods, the Gandharvas, the Pisachas, the snakes, and the Rakshasas will know me as a true friend of Vyasa. He that hatteth him, hatteth me. He that followeth him, followeth me. Thou hast intelligence. Know that Arjuna is half of myself. When morning comes after the expiry of this night, thou, O Daruka, equipping my excellent car according to the rules of military science, must bring it and follow me with it carefully, placing on it my celestial mace called Kamadaki, my dart and discus, bow and arrows, and every other thing necessary. O Sutta, making room on the terrace of my car for my standard and for the heroic Garuda thereon, that adorns my umbrella, and yoking thereto my foremost of steeds, named Valahaka and Megapushpa and Saivya and Sugriva, having cased them in golden mail of the splendor of the sun and fire, and thyself putting on thy armor, stay on it carefully. Upon hearing the loud and terrible blast of my conch Panchajanya emitting the shrill Rishava note, thou wilt come quickly to me. In course of a single day, O Daruka, I shall dispel the wrath and the diverse woes of my cousin, the son of my paternal aunt. By every means shall I strive so that Vibhatsu in battle may slay Jayadratha in the very sight of the Dhartarashtras. O charioteer, I tell thee that Vibhatsu will certainly succeed in slaying all these for whose slaughter he will strive. Daruka said, he is certain to have victory whose charioteership, O tiger among men, hath been taken by thee. Whence, indeed, can defeat come to him? As regards myself, I will do that which thou hast commanded me to do. This night will bring, on its train, the auspicious morn for Arjuna's victory. Footnotes 152:1 Nilkantha supposes that Tasmai here refers to the three-eyed and not to Krishna. This seems to be right. 154:1 The second note of the Hindu gamut. Mahabharata, Book 7, Section 80. Sanjaya said, Kunti's son, Dhananjaya, of inconceivable prowess, thinking of how to accomplish his vow, recollected the mantras given to him by Vyasa. And soon he was lulled in the arms of sleep. Unto that eight-bannered hero, burning with grief and immersed in thought, Kesava, having Garuda on his banner, appeared in a dream. Dhananjaya, of righteous soul, in consequence of his love and veneration for Kesava, never omitted under any circumstances to stand up and advance a few steps for receiving Krishna. Rising up, therefore, now, in his dream, he gave unto Govinda a seat. He himself, however, at that time, did not set his heart upon taking his seat. Then Krishna, of mighty energy, knowing the resolution of Partha, said, while seated, unto the son of Kunti, these words while the latter was standing: Do not set thy heart, O Partha, on grief. Time is unconquerable. Time forceth all creatures into the inevitable course. O foremost of men, what for is this grief of thine? Grief should not be indulged in, O foremost of learned persons. Grief is an impediment to action. Accomplish that act which should be accomplished. The grief that mocketh a person forego all efforts is, indeed, O Dhananjaya, an enemy of that person. A person, by indulging in grief, gladdens his foes and saddens his friends, while the person is himself weakened. Therefore, it behoveth thee not to grieve. Thus addressed by Vasudeva, the unvanquished Vibhatsu of great learning then said these words of grave import: Grave is the vow that I have made about the slaughter of Jayadratha. Even tomorrow I shall slay that wicked wretch, that slayer of my son. Even this hath been my vow, O Kesava. For frustrating my vow, Jayadratha, protected by all the mighty car warriors, will be kept in their rear by the Dhartarashtras. Their force, number, consists, O Madhava, of remnant, after slaughter, of 11 Akshahinis of troops, difficult of being vanquished. Surrounded in battle as he will be by all of them and by all the great car warriors, how shall he obtain a sight, O Krishna, of the wicked rule of the Sindhus? My vow will not be accomplished, O Kesava. How can a person like me live, having failed to accomplish his vow? O hero, the non-accomplishment is evident of this, my vow, which to me is a source of great grief. At this season of the year, I tell thee that the sun setteth quickly. The bird-bannered Krishna, hearing this cause of Partha's grief, touched water and sat with face turned to the east. And then that hero, of eyes like lotus leaves, and possessed of great energy, said these words for the benefit of Pandu's son, who had resolved upon the slaughter of the ruler of the Sindhus: O Partha, there is an indestructible, supreme weapon of the name of Pasapata. With it the god Mahesvara slew in battle all the Daityas. If thou rememberest it now, thou shalt then be able to slay Jayadratha tomorrow. If it is unknown to thee, now, adore within thy heart the god having the bull for his mark. Thinking of that god in thy mind, remember him, O Dhananjaya. Thou art his devotee. Through his grace thou shalt obtain that rich possession. Hearing these words of Krishna, Dhananjaya, having touched water, sat on the earth with concentrated mind and thought of the god Bhava. After he had thus sat with rapt mind at that hour called Brahma of auspicious indications, Arjuna saw himself journeying through the sky with Kesava. And Partha, possessed of the speed of the mind, seemed to reach, with Kesava, the sacred foot of Himavat and the Manamat mountain, abounding in many brilliant gems and frequented by Siddhas and Charanas. And the Lord Kesava seemed to have caught hold of his left arm. And he seemed to see many wonderful sights as he reached those places. And Arjuna of righteous soul then seemed to arrive at the white mountain on the north. And then he beheld, in the pleasure gardens of Kuvera, the beautiful lake decked with lotuses. And he also saw that foremost of rivers, viz., the Ganga full of water. And then he arrived at the regions about the Mandara mountains. Those regions were covered with trees that always bore blossoms and fruits. And they abounded with stones lying scattered about, that were all transparent crystal. And they were inhabited by lions and tigers, and abounded with animals of diverse kinds. And they were adorned with many beautiful retreats of ascetics, echoing with the sweet notes of delightful warblers. And they resounded also with the songs of Kinnaras. Graced with many golden and silver peaks, they were illumined with diverse herbs and plants. And many mandara trees with their pretty loads of flowers adorned them. And then Arjuna reached the mountains called Kala that looked like a mound of antimony. And then he reached the summit called Brahmatunga, and then many rivers, and then many inhabited provinces. And he arrived at Satasinga, and the woods known by the name of Shariati. And then he beheld the sacred spot known as the Horsehead, and then the region of Atharvana. And then he beheld that prince of mountains called Vrishadansa, and the great Mandara, abounding in apsaras, and graced with the presence of the Kinnaras. And roaming on that mountain, Partha, with Krishna, beheld a spot of earth adorned with excellent fountains, decked with golden mineral, and possessed of the splendor of the lunar rays, and having many cities and towns. And he also beheld many seas of wonderful forms, and diverse mines of wealth. And thus going through the sky and firmament and the earth, he reached the spot called Vishnupada. And wandering, with Krishna in his company, he came down with great velocity, like a shaft shot, from a bow. And soon Partha beheld a blazing mountain whose splendor equaled that of the planets, the constellations, or fire. And arrived at that mountain, he beheld on its top the high-souled god having the bull for his mark, and ever engaged in ascetic penances, like 1,000 suns collected together, and blazing with his own effulgence. Trident in hand, matted locks on the head, of snow-white color, he was robed in bark and skin. Endued with great energy, his body seemed to be flaming with 1,000 eyes. And he was seated with Parvati and many creatures of brilliant forms around him. And his attendants were engaged in singing and playing upon musical instruments, and laughing and dancing, in moving and stretching their hands, and in uttering loud shouts. And the place was perfumed with fragrant odors, and rishis that worshipped Brahma adored with excellent hymns of unfading glory that God who was the protector of all creatures, and wielded the great bow called Pinaka. Beholding him, Vasudeva of righteous soul, with Partha, touched the earth with his head, uttering the eternal words of the Veda. And Krishna adored, with speech, mind, understanding, and acts, that God who is the first source of the universe, himself uncreate, the supreme Lord of unfading glory, who is the highest cause of the mind, who is space and the wind, who is the cause of all the luminous bodies, and the firmament, who is the creator of the rain, and the supreme, primordial substance of the earth, who is the object of adoration, with the gods, the Danavas, the Yakshas, and human beings, who is the supreme Brahma. That is seen by yogins and the refuge of those acquainted with Shastras, who is the creator of all mobile and immobile creatures, and their destroyer also, who is the wrath that burns everything at the end of the Yuga, who is the supreme soul, who is the Sakra and Surya, and the origin of all attributes. And Krishna sought the protection of that Bhava, whom men of knowledge, desirous of attaining to that which is called the subtle and the spiritual, behold, that uncreate one is the soul of all causes. And Arjuna repeatedly adored that deity, knowing that he was the origin of all creatures and the cause of the past, the future, and the present. Beholding those two, viz., Nara and Narayana arrived, Bhava of cheerful soul, smilingly said unto them, Welcome are ye, ye foremost of men. Rise up and let the fatigue of your journey be over. What, O heroes, is the desire in your heart? Let it be uttered quickly. What is the business that has brought you hither? I will accomplish it and do what would benefit you. I will grant everything ye may desire." Hearing those words of the god, they both rose. And then, with joined hands, the faultless Vasudeva and Arjuna, both of great wisdom, began to gratify that high-souled deity with an excellent hymn. And Krishna and Arjuna said, "We bow to Bhava, to Sarva, to Rudra, to the boon-giving deity. We bow to the Lord of all creatures endued with life, to the God who is always fierce, to him who is called Kapardhan. We bow to Mahadeva, to Bhima, to the three-eyed, to him who is peace and contentment. We bow to Isana, to him who is the destroyer of Dakshas, sacrifice. Let salutations be to the slayer of Andhaka, to the father of Kamara, to him who is of blue throat, to him who is the creator. Let salutation be to the wielder of Panaka, to one worthy of the offer of libations of clarified butter, to him who is truth, to him who is all-pervading. To him who is unvanquished. To him who is always of blue locks, to him who is armed with the trident, to him who is of celestial vision. To him who is Hatri, to him who protects all, to him who is of three eyes, to him who is disease, to him whose vital seed fell on fire. To him who is inconceivable, to him who is the Lord of Amvika, to him who is adored by all the gods. To him who hath the bull for his mark, to him who is bold, to him who is of matted lock, to him who is a Brahmacharan. To him who standeth as an ascetic in the water, to him who is devoted to Brahma, to him who hath never been conquered. To him who is the soul of the universe, to him who is the creator of the universe, to him who liveth pervading the whole universe. We bow to thee that art the object of the reverence of all, to thee that art the original cause of all creatures. To thee that art called Brahmachakra, to thee that art called Sarva, Sankara, and Shiva. We bow to thee that art the Lord of all great beings. We bow to thee that hast 1,000 heads, to thee that hast 1,000 arms, to thee that art called Death. To thee that hast 1,000 eyes, 1,000 legs. To thee whose acts are innumerable. We bow to thee whose complexion is that of gold, to thee that art cased in golden mail, to thee that art ever compassionate to thy devotees. O Lord, let our wish be accomplished. Sanjaya continued, having adored Mahadeva in these terms, Vasudeva with Arjuna then began to gratify him for obtaining the great weapon called Pasapata. Present you by HinduMonastery.com.